12. She enjoyed the new routine, walking with Connor in the mornings, riding Alistair on the guideds, juggling in a few students, then having Boyle walk or drive her home again. Late afternoons meant work and practice, and an additional hour at night for refining her skills. The sun came out again, so the river sparkled with it. The lochs went to gleaming mirrors, and the green of the fields and hills only deepened under its shine through the puffs and layers of clouds streaming across the sky. She could forget, almost, all that lay on the line, all yet to be faced. After all, she was having a romance. Not one that included poetry and flowers, and her romantic sensibilities would have relished just that. But when your heart aimed toward a man like Boyle, you had to learn to find poetry in brief words and long silences, and flowers in an unexpected mug of tea pushed into your hands, or a quick nod of approval. And who needed flowers when the man could kiss the breath out of her, which he did in the green shadows of the woods, or in the disordered cab of his lorry? Romance, a home, a steady paycheck, a magnificent horse she could call her own, and the new and brilliant understanding of her craft. If she just eliminated the threat of ancient evil, her life struck the top of the bell. She finished her lesson with Sarah, both of them pleased with the progress. "Your form's really improving. We're going to work more on changing leads, smoothing that out. But when can we add another bar? I'm ready, Iona. I know it." "We'll see how it goes next lesson." Looking up into Sarah's pleading eyes, Iona patted her mount's neck and remembered herself at that age. "I'll tell you what. 1 bar up, 1 jump before you take Winnie in and tend to her." "You mean it? Oh, thanks. This is brilliant." 1 bar, 1 jump, Iona repeated, and glanced at Sarah's mother as she started to the bars. She hefted one, maneuvered it in place. Just 3 feet, she thought, and believed her student could handle it. If not, the horse would know. She looked back at the horse now. She wants to fly, wants to feel you fly with her. Keep it steady. Iona stepped back, noted Sarah's mother twisted the ends of the scarf she wore around her neck. "All right, Sarah, it's only 1 bar, but you have to let Winnie know you're in it together. Trust her, and let her know she can trust you. Eyes open, let's have a good, steady pace, and remember your form." Her heart was pounding, Iona knew, with such excitement and some nerves. Still, a beginner's course, even with the single additional bar, but a new challenge, a new hope. "Good, that's good," she called out, circling as Sarah took Winnie around the course. "Posture, Sarah, light hands, you both know what to do." Set, she thought, steady and smooth, gather, and go. She flew a little herself as she watched her student soar cleanly over the bar, land well, adjust, then wave one hand over her head in triumph. "Oh, it's like magic it is! Can I do it again, Iona? Just 1 more!" Once more around, then Winnie needs her rub down. She watched now with a critical eye, noting little things they'd work on. "I feel I could do it forever and jump twice as high." 1 bar at a time, Iona told her. "Did you see, Ma? Did you see me?" "I did. You were beautiful. Go on now, see to your horse, and we'll go home and tell your da." "Could I have a word?" she said to Iona. "Sure. I'll be right in, Sarah. And tell Mooney Winnie earned an apple." "I nearly made you stop," Mrs. Hannigan told her. "I nearly called out to you. No, not yet. All I could see in my mind's eye was Sarah flying off, lying on the ground with something broken. It's hard to let her push new boundaries. Oh, it is indeed, and you'll know yourself one day when you've children. But I knew under it you wouldn't let her do something she wasn't ready for. She's doing so well with you, is so happy with you. I wanted you to know that. She's a joy to teach. I think it shows in both of you. I took a picture with my phone when she did the jump." She pulled the phone out, turned the screen to Iona. "My hand shook, I'm afraid, so it's a bit blurry, but I knew I'd want to have that moment." Iona studied the screen, the flight, the young girl on the back of the sturdy horse, and the bar and air under them. She gave the slightest push, then turned the screen back. It's a wonderful shot, and it's clear and sharp. You can see the joy and the concentration on her face. Lips pursed, Mrs. Hannigan studied the photo again, then those lips curved. Oh, it is good. It must have been my eyes blurry when I first looked at it. You stay for every lesson. Her mother hadn't, Iona remembered. I think it makes her strive to do better, knowing you're here for her, that you support her. Well, of course I do. I'm her ma. I'm going to call her father right now and tell him to pick up some strawberry ice cream. It's her favourite. We'll have a little celebration after dinner. I won't keep you, but I wanted to thank you for building her confidence, and my own. They're lucky to have you here. Iona wasn't sure her boots touched the ground all the way into the stables. She stopped when her eyes adjusted to the change of light, and she spotted Boyle. I didn't know you were here. Only just, and I've gotten an earful from Sarah. She's floating 3 feet off the ground. We both are. I wish you could have seen her. I should make sure she's tending Winnie. She is, and well, and she's now fully in love, and Mooney's keeping an eye. I thought you might want to take Alistair out. I'm going to give Darling a try, just see how she goes. He'd be good company for her. And you for me, he added after a moment. I'd love it, but I've still got about a half hour on the clock. You'll be helping exercise the horses, so you can consider it a job if it eases your conscience. Works for me. In fact, she couldn't think of a better way to end her workday than with a ride with the man who made her heart flutter. She watched Darling as Boyle mounted, caught the quiver along her flanks, the expression in her eyes. She's nervous. I can feel that for myself. To soothe, he bent over, murmuring and stroking. Do you know why? She's more weight on her than she's used to, and hasn't had a rider on her back in weeks. That's not it. Iona turned Alistair so Boyle and Darling fell into step beside her. She trusts you and loves you. She's nervous she won't do well, and you won't want to ride her again. Then she's foolish. It's a fine day for a ride. We'll head to the loch and around a bit if it's all right with you. More than all right. You'll tell me if she hurts and I don't notice. I will, but she's feeling very sound. She likes the look of Alistair, she added, sotto voce. Thinks he's very handsome. He is that. He's pretending not to notice her, but he's peacocking a little. Now you're hunting up a romance for the horses. I know he's for Anna, but a stallion like Alistair's meant to sire foals, and she's meant for breeding. Plus, I don't have to hunt up anything. I just have to pay attention to say they like the look of each other. I hadn't thought of breeding her. Anna will make the regal and the magnificent, Iona said. Darling, she'll make the sweet and the dependable. In my opinion, she added. Well, Alistair's yours, so you'll have a say in it. I think he has the most to say, as do the ladies. It's almost spring. She lifted her face, looked at the sky through the boughs. You can feel it coming. Still cold as February. That may be, but it's coming. The air's softer. That would be the rain moving in tonight. She only laughed. And I saw a pair of magpies flirting out by Branna's feeder this morning. Just how does a magpie flirt? They fly to and away, then chatter at each other and do it again. I asked Connor why the hawks don't go after them, and he said they have an arrangement. I like that. They moved into single file when the path narrowed and wound by the river where the water thrashed under a broken rope bridge. Will they ever fix that? She wondered. I'm doubting it, as people would be foolish enough to walk on it and end up falling in. You'd be one of them. Who says I'd fall in? And if I did, I'm a strong swimmer. Because she enjoyed flirting, she sent him a long under-the-lashes look. Are you? I live on an isthmus on an island. I'd be a bleeding git not to swim and well. We'll have to take a dip sometime. She glanced back again and remembered her first sight of him, and how striking, how compelling he'd looked, the big, tough man on the big, tough horse. But she realized he only looked more striking now, seated on the mare he'd brought back to health, his hands light on the reins, her eyes glowing with pride. She's not nervous anymore. I know it. She's doing fine and well. He moved up beside Iona as the path allowed. I talked to my grandmother last night, she began. I couldn't settle for email anymore, just wanted to hear her voice. She sends you her best, and mine goes back to her. She's planning to come for a few weeks, either this summer or fall. I want her to, but at the same time, you worry if we've still battles to fight. You want her safe. She's everything to me. I thought when... I talked too much. No doubt of it, but you might as well speak your mind. I was just going to say how Sarah's mother's always there for her lessons, and her father's come by twice to watch her. My mother would just drop me off, or more often I'd catch a ride to and from with one of the other students. My father never came, never once. Rarely to a competition either. But Nan did whenever she could. She'd drive to wherever they were whenever she could. Sometimes she'd just be there, and I wouldn't know she'd planned to come. She paid for the lessons and the entry fees. I didn't know that until I was staying with her once and heard a message on her machine about renewing the contract with the stables. She gave you what you loved. I want her to be proud of me. I guess it's a lot like Darling. I want to do well so she can see she didn't waste the time and effort. Then you're foolish as well. I know. Can't seem to help it. She looked out over the lake, away to the elegant rise of the castle, its gardens still caught in the last of winter's bite. People strolled around, here to see and do and experience from wherever they'd travelled. She understood it was like the photo of Sarah, a moment she wanted to have. So as they walked the horses along the water, she let everything else go and took a page from Boyle's book. She embraced the silence. "We should start back," he said at length. "I don't want to overwork her. No, and Branna will be expecting me for my lesson. Going well enough, then?" "Yes, Branna might have some quibbles, but I think it's going just grand." She glanced to him with a grin, saw him looking past her with a frown. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I was noticing the cottage there. They've a fine menu. Maybe after your lesson you'd like to have some dinner there." She lifted her eyebrows. "With you?" His frown only deepened. "Well, of course, with me. Who else?" "There's no one else," she said simply. "I'd love to. I could be ready by 7 or 7:30. "7:30's good. I'll book it and fetch you." "That sounds grand, too." As they slipped into the woods, into the dimmer light, she began a mental inventory of her wardrobe. What would she wear? Nothing too fancy, but not jeans or trousers. Maybe Branna could help her out there, as her options were limited. Something simple but pretty. Heels, not boots. Her legs were damn good if she said so herself. She'd like to dazzle him, at least a little. So Alistair shied, Darling reared, and the wolf stepped across the path. Her thoughts centered on the safety of the horses. Iona didn't think, just acted. She streamed a line of fire across the path between them. "It won't hurt you. I won't let it hurt you." Boyle drew a knife from a sheath on his belt she hadn't noticed. "He bloody hell won't." "Don't dismount," Iona shouted, anticipating. "She's terrified. She'll bolt, and it might get to her. You have to hold her, Boyle. Take her reins, tack her down, and get them safe. I'll hold it off. Separating us makes us easier prey." It's what it wanted, hoped for. She could feel it. "Trust me, please, please." And struggling to focus, she murmured, her voice quiet, steady, an incantation she learned from the books, one still untried. The wolf lunged at the line of fire, looking for an opening. With its fierce charge, the flames dimmed, lowered. Gripping the reins in one hand, Iona lifted the other high. "From north and south, from east and west, bring on the wind for this contest. Strike up the power, bring on the fire until the tower whirls higher and higher. Blow strong, blow fierce, blow wild and free. As I will, so mote it be." "You think I don't have it," she said between her teeth. "You're wrong." Above the sky churned, and with her lifted hand she balled a fist as if pulling the flame-edged whirlwind that formed into her fingers. She flung out her arms, sent a raging funnel of wind through the fire. It lifted the wolf off its feet, threw it up as it screamed in rage, and she hoped in fear. It spun, claws lashing air as it bore him up and away. Iona fought to control what she'd conjured, felt it building beyond her. A tree snapped, collapsed into jagged splinters. "Take it down." Boyle's voice came steady in her ear. "It's more than you need, and too much. Take it down again now, Iona, as only you can. Let it calm. Let it go." A line of sweat beaded down her back as she fought to do just that. The roar of the wind began to fade, the impossible swirl of it to slow. "All the way down now, Iona." "I'm trying. It's so strong." "It's you who made it. It's you who's strong." She'd made it, she thought. She'd control it. She'd end it. "Still now," she said, "and soft, calm and sweet. Disperse." The wolf dropped like a stone in the light breeze, then sprang up, fangs dripping. Did the red jewel seem dimmer, she wondered? Then it leapt into the woods, pulsing out a curtain of smoky fog. After one distant howl, silence fell again. It could come back. All calm deserted her as her hands shook, as her voice jumped. It could come back. We need to get the horses in. I need to make sure the stables are safe. That's what we'll do. Breathe a minute. You've gone dead pale. I'm all right. Under her, Alistair pawed the ground. He'd pursue, she realized, longed to. To calm him, she had to calm herself. "We've done enough," she said softly. "It's enough for now. I need to tell Branna, Connor. But the horses, we're going now. Easy, easy." She took those breaths, then laid her hand on Alistair's neck and over on Darling's. "Easy," she repeated. "It won't hurt you. I didn't know you had a knife, a really big knife. A pity I didn't get to use it." Those gilded eyes hard, he sheathed the blade again. "But worth it for the show, I suppose. And you need more lessons on this business." "Absolutely. That one wasn't even on the lesson plan." "What do you mean?" "I read it in a book. I guess you could say I added a bar to the jump. It seemed like the time." "In a book? She read it in a book? Christ Jesus! I could really use a drink. You're not alone there." She didn't say more, needed to steady herself, needed to tell her cousins, she thought again, needed really to sit down on something that didn't move. They were nearly back to the stables before she could think clearly, or almost clearly, again. "Darling was so scared. For herself, but for you, too. My fire scared her, too. I wish I'd thought of something else. She did just fine. Wanted to bolt, but didn't. You may not know it, but that one, he was a rock under you. He never, from that first start, flinched a muscle. I'm thinking he would have done whatever you asked, even up to charging through the fire and taking the beast by the scruff. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to tell him. He just knew. I need to call Branna. I'll see to that." When they reached the stables, he dismounted, then stepped over to her. "Come on down, then." "I'm not sure I can." "That's what these are for." He lifted his hands, took hold of her, helped her down. "Go sit on the bench there for a minute or two. The horses, they'll be seen to, and well. What do you think?" The sizzle of impatience had her obeying, and her shaky legs carried her to the bench, almost wept with gratitude as she sat. When Boyle came out, she managed to get to her feet. "I need to do a protection spell for the stables." "Do you think Finn hasn't already seen to that?" Boyle simply took her arm, pulled her along. "He's not due home for a few hours, but I think he knows what he's about in these matters. Branna knows where you are. She'll tell Connor." "Where am I going?" "Up to mine, where you'll have that drink and sit a bit more." "I could really use both." She climbed the stairs with him. Not exactly the circumstances she'd imagined for her first invitation into his place, but she'd take it. He opened the door off a narrow porch. Company wasn't expected. She peeked in first, then smiled. Thank God it's not all neat and tidy, or I'd feel intimidated. But it's nice. She stepped in, looked around. It smelled like him. Horses, leather, man. The room, a kind of combination living-sitting kitchen, let in the early evening light. A mug sat next to the sink. A newspaper lay spread on the short counter that separated the kitchen from the rest. A couple of books and some magazines were scattered around. Mystery novels, she noted, and horsey magazines. A tumble of boots in a wooden box, a clutter of old jackets on pegs, a sofa with a little sag in the middle, 2 big chairs, and to her surprise, a big flat screen on the wall. He noticed her speculative look. I like it for watching matches and such. You'll have some whiskey. I absolutely will, and a chair. I get shaky after it's all done. You were steady enough while it counted. I almost lost it. She spoke as he went to the kitchen, opened cupboards. You helped me hold on. Since she was here and safe and it was done, he could speak of it, or try. You were glowing like a flame. Your eyes so deep it seemed like worlds could be swallowed up by them. You reached up and you pulled a storm from the sky with your hand. I've seen things. He poured whiskey for both of them, brought the glasses back to where she sat dwarfed in one of the big chairs. I've run tame with Finn most of my life, and Connor, and Branagh. I've seen things, but never have I seen the like of that. I've never felt anything like it. A storm in my hand. She looked down at it now, turned it, amazed to recognize it, to find it so ordinary. And a storm inside me. I don't know how to explain it, but it was inside me. So huge and full and absolutely right. I broke a tree, didn't I? He'd watched it shatter like brittle glass into shards and splinters. It could have been worse entirely. Yeah, it could have been. But I need more lessons, more practice. More control, she thought, and more of the famous focus Branagh continually harped on. Then she looked at Boyle, the hard, handsome face, the scarred eyebrow, the tawny eyes with temper still simmering in them. You were going to fight it with a knife, with your hands. It bleeds, doesn't it? I think so, yes. She let out one more cleansing breath. It bleeds. It wasn't expecting what I did or could do. Neither was I. I think neither of you will underestimate that again. Drink your whiskey. You're pale yet. Right, she sipped at it. I think it's not the night for dinner out with people. Maybe not, but I'm starving. I think it's something to do with expending all that energy. I'll throw you together something. I've a couple of chops, I think, and I'll fry up some chips. Are you taking care of me? You could use it at the moment. Drink your whiskey, he said again, then walked back to the kitchen. Rattling pans, a thwack of a knife on wood, the sizzle of oil. Something about the sounds eased her frayed nerves. She sipped more whiskey, rose, and walked back to where he stood at the stove, frying pork chops in one skillet, chipped potatoes in another. She wasn't sure she'd ever had a fried chop, but wasn't complaining. I can help. Keep my hands and head busy. I've a couple of tomatoes in there Mick's wife gave me from her little greenhouse. You could slice them up. So she worked beside him, and felt better for that, too. He made some sort of thin gravy from the drippings, tossed some herbs in it, then poured it over the chops. Seated at the counter, Iona sampled a bite. It's good. What were you expecting? I didn't have a clue, but it's good, and God, I'm seriously starving. Her colour came up well as she ate, he noted, and that slightly dazed look faded from her eyes. She'd gone from glowing and fierce to pale and shaky in the blink of an eye, and now it relieved him to see her slide back to just normal, just Iona. He didn't use the fog, she said abruptly. I just realized it just walked out of the trees. I don't know what that means, but I have to remember to tell Branagh and Connor and Finn. And the jewel, the red jewel around its neck, it wasn't as bright at the end, I don't think, was it? I couldn't see. It was more about its teeth and the way you'd gone so white. I wondered if you'd slide right out of the saddle. Never going to happen. She laughed a little, closed her hand over his, and stilled when his turned under hers, gripped hard. You scared the life out of me. The fucking life. I'm sorry. What in the hell are you apologizing for? It's an irritating habit. I'm working on it. 1 minute we're riding along easy as you please, and I'm thinking, well then, we'll have dinner and see how that goes. The next you're reaping a bloody whirlwind. He shoved up, snatched his plate and hers, which was too bad, she thought, as she'd had a couple more chips and would have eaten them. If you don't want me to apologize, don't yell at me. I'm not yelling at you. Who then? No one, I'm just yelling. A man can express himself as he pleases in his own house. Nobody ever yelled in my house. What? He looked genuinely astonished. Were you reared in a church? She laughed again. I think maybe, if I go by your gauge, nobody cared enough to yell. Do you care, Boyle? I care you're not lying on the ground out there with your throat torn out. He cursed himself as her colour slid away. No, I'm sorry. Truly, I've the devil's own tongue when I'm in a temper. I'm sorry, he repeated, and put his hands gently on her face to cup it. You were so fierce. I don't know what turned me more around, the wolf or you. We came through it. That means a lot. She put her hands over his. And you made me dinner. You let me settle before you let it rip. That means a lot, too. Then we're all right. All right enough for now. He touched his lips to hers, gentle this time, and her hands slid to his wrists, tightened. We should take you home now. He eased back, but she kept her hands on his wrists. I don't want you to take me home. I want to stay with you. You're still turned around. Do I look turned around? He managed to step back, a foot away. Maybe I'm turned around. I don't mind that. She rose. I might even like it. We won a battle, Boyle, together. I want to be with you, to hold on to you, to go to bed with you. I think the sensible thing is to take some time to talk about that before that. I thought I was the one who talked too much. She took a step toward him, then another. You do. Jesus, you do. But I think, under the circumstances... We'll talk later, he said, and grabbed her. Perfect, she said, and grabbed him back. 13. Her feet left the floor again, a giddy sensation with her mouth pressed to his. He had a hand fisted on the back of her sweater as if he might rip it away at any second, which would have suited her just fine. If she could have managed it, she'd have wiggled right out of the sweater and everything else. We need to... Whatever he'd meant to say slid away as her mouth came back avidly to his. Where's the bedroom? It had to be close, and if not, the saggy couch looked more than adequate. It's... He tried to think through the hot haze in his brain, then just grabbed her ass, gave her a boost. She hooked her legs around his waist and her arms chained around his neck. Everything tilted and sizzled. She had a vague impression of a dimly lit room, some clutter, some of which he kicked away as he carted her to a bed with dark wooden spindles and cool white sheets. Then she might have been anywhere. The forest, the ocean, a city sidewalk, a country meadow. There was nothing but him. The weight of him pressed down on her, the big hands roaming, the urgent mouth seeking, taking. Nothing but those cool white sheets growing warmer, warmer as he tugged the sweater over her head, tossed it aside. Everything about her was so small and exquisite. The breasts that fit so perfectly into his palms, the hands that dived under his shirt to glide over his skin. He wasn't a clumsy man, but feared he would be with her, and tried to slow his pace, smooth out his rhythm. But her hips arched up, her fingers dug into bunched muscles, urging him on. He wanted her naked, as simple and basic as that. He wanted that pretty little body uncovered for him, stripped bare for his hands, for his mouth. He reached down, tugged at the buckle of her belt. She spoke, the words muffled against his lips. What? If she'd said stop, he'd kill himself. Boots. Her lips roamed over his face, then her teeth nipped at his jaw. Boots first. Boots. Right. Already winded and a bit disconcerted by it, he slid down, knelt at the foot of the bed, yanked at her right boot. He tossed it. It landed with an abrupt thump. As he tugged on the left, she levered up, got a grip on his hair, and yanked his head back to hers. You look... It's all shadowy, and I can just hear the rain starting, and my heart's pounding so hard. She punctuated the words with wild kisses. This time, when he threw the boot, something crashed and shattered. Yours. Let me get yours. She wiggled back for his boot. They have to go, because I have to get you naked or I'll go out of my mind. I was thinking the same of you. Good. Her laugh, shaky with nerves and excitement, raced up his spine. Same page, same station. She shoved the first boot to the floor. Put your hands on me, would you? Anywhere, everywhere. I've almost got this. She couldn't know it, but she'd gotten her wish. She'd dazzled him. Will it shut you up? Maybe. Probably. There. She pried off the boot, dropped it, and flew at him. She nearly upended them both off the bed, but he managed to wrap around her and roll. Even as he sank into the next kiss, her hands got busy on his shirt. You've got such great shoulders. I just want to... She dragged it off, pulled the thermal beneath it up and away. She made a sound like a woman licking melted chocolate from a spoon as her hands ran over his pecs, up to his shoulders, down to squeeze his biceps. You're so strong. I won't hurt you. She laughed again. No nerves this time. I'm not going to promise the same. Agile and quick, she reached back, unclipped the clasp of her bra. Made it easy for you. I'm up for difficult work. He drew the bra aside. Now be quiet, so I can concentrate on it. In a moment, she couldn't think, much less speak. So many sensations rushed over her like his hands that thrilled, that took, that tortured. Those rough working-man palms, the prickly stubble of a day-long beard, thrill over thrill on her quivering skin. Boys, she realized, every one who'd ever touched her had been a boy compared to him, all too smooth, too easy, too practiced. Now she had a man who wanted her. He wasted no time peeling her out of the jeans, exploring her body, feasting on it. She'd brought the whirlwind in the woods. Now he stirred one inside her, just as reckless and wild. She gave to him with no hint of restraint or shyness, a bounty of delights and demands that aroused him beyond reason. Her gasp or groan fired more needs. Her willful hands sparked nerves over and under his skin, and her mouth, restless and hungry, stirred in his blood like a drug. Mad for her, he took her hands, drew her arms back until they both gripped the spindles. When he drove into her, he thought for a moment the world exploded. It shook him, the force of it, blinded him, the brilliance of it, left him for that breath of time utterly weak. Then she rose up to him, taking him deeper on the sigh of his name. And he was strong as a god, randy as a stallion, mad as a hatter. He thrust into her again, crazed for all that heat, all that softness. She matched his frantic pace, her fingers twining with his, her hips slick pistons, driving and driven. He felt himself flying, an arrow from a bow, the helpless glory of it, heard her dimly let out a sobbing cry as she flew with him. He collapsed, mindless of his weight on her. His mind still whirled, his lungs still labored, and something in his speeding heart pulsed like an ache. She quivered beneath him, trembling limbs, pinging muscles. She wanted badly to wrap around him, to stroke and nuzzle, but she didn't have the strength. He'd just hulled her out. She could only lie there, washed in heat, listening to his rapid breathing and the slow patter of rain. I'm smothering you. Maybe. His own muscles shook as he pushed himself off, then just flopped over on his back. He'd never been so caught up, he decided. What did it mean? She took a couple of deep drinks of air, then curled over to nestle her head on his chest. There was a simple sweetness in that he couldn't resist, and he found himself drawing her in a bit closer. "Are you cold, then? Are you kidding? We generated enough heat to melt the Arctic. I feel amazing. You're stronger than you look." She tipped her head up to smile at him. "Small but mighty." "I can't argue." It would be easy, he realized, to just stay as they were, to just drift off into sleep a while, then take each other again. And what did it mean that he was thinking about it again when he'd barely gotten his breath back? It meant, perhaps, easy was a mistake. "I should take you home." She didn't speak for a moment, and the hand lazily stroking his chest stilled. "Branna'd be waiting, I'd think." Oh. He felt her breath go in, go out. "You're right. She'll want to know exactly what happened before. I forgot all about that for a minute. It seems like something outside all this. It's a good thing one of us is practical." Turning her head, she brushed her lips over his skin, then sat up. When he looked at her in that shadowed light, aglow against the coming dark, he wanted to draw her close again, close, and just hold on. "We'd better get dressed," she said. Branna was waiting and trying not to pace and fret. She hated only having bits and pieces. Though Boyle had assured her no one was hurt and he'd look after Iona until she was well settled again, it had been 2 hours now. More, she realized. Worse, Connor had told her not to be such a mother hen and had taken himself off to the pub rather than, in his words, have his brain assaulted with all her fussing. Fine for him, she thought with some bitterness. Off he goes to flirt with available women, have a pint or two, and she was left to brood alone. If Iona didn't walk in the door within another 10 minutes, she'd— "At last," she muttered when she heard the front door open. Striding out, half a lecture already in mind, she stopped both her forward progress and her nagging words the minute she saw both of them. A woman didn't have to be a witch to realize how the pair of them had spent a portion of the last 2 hours. "So," she laid her hands on her hips as Cathal padded over to greet them both. "We'll have some tea and you'll tell me what happened. You as well," she said to Boyle, anticipating him. "I want to hear it all, so don't think about scooting out the door again. Is Connor about?" "He's not, no. Took himself off to the pub to flirt with whoever's about, so you've no cover there. Have you had anything to eat?" she asked as she walked into the kitchen. "Boyle fixed dinner," Iona told her. "Did he now?" Brow lifted, Branna sent him a sidelong look as she put the kettle on. "I was starving after. I was hungry after the spell with the rats, but this was like eat or pass out. It won't always be so keen. You're new at it, and you're looking fit and fine and more than well tended to now. Oh, stop shuffling about, Boyle. A blind monkey could see the two of you have been at each other. I've no problem with that, except instead of a good shag, I've been twiddling about waiting for you to come talk to me." "I should have come home sooner instead of worrying you." Branna shrugged, then softened. "If I'd had a man willing to make me dinner and give me a good roll after a fright like that, I'd have taken it as well. I trust he did a good job with both." Iona grinned. "Exceptional." Heat rose up Boyle's back like a fever. "Would you mind not batting around my sex life, at least while I'm sitting here?" "We'll bat it around when you're not, then." Branna poured his tea, kissed the top of his head. "Have you eaten?" Iona asked her. "Not yet. I will once I hear what you have to say. From the start, Iona, and if she leaves anything out, Boyle, however slight, you fill it in." Iona began, trying to speak in full detail and with calm. Branna gripped her hand. "You're saying you called a whirlwind? How did you know the way?" It's in the books. I know it's advanced and it's risky, but it was... I don't know why or how, but I knew it was what I needed to do. I knew I could. Why didn't you call me or Connor? Both. It was so fast. When I play it back, it's like it was hours, stage by stage, but it was so fast. I don't think it was more than a couple minutes. If that, Boyle confirmed. All right, but it's best if you call for me and Connor. Or Finn, Boyle put in. I'm not shutting him out. Or only a little, Branagh admitted. But blood calls to blood, Boyle. We've the same blood, Connor, Iona, and I. And this is blood magics at work. You weren't so afraid. Connor would have sensed that, as he did before. You weren't so afraid as before, in the woods, alone. A little, but no, not like before. Maybe because I wasn't alone. I could only think he'd hurt Boyle and the horses to get to me. It helped me focus, I think. Branagh nodded, but pushed at her hair. I'm jumping you around. You said he didn't bring the fog. No. More to catch you off guard than to rattle your nerves, then. And it may be he pulled some power from the fog as well and wasn't as strong. Didn't think he'd need to be. Boyle nodded. He learned different. She turned a tree to toothpicks. I had some trouble with control. Calling a whirlwind with no practice. I'm not surprised. And it's a wonder if it's a tree's all the damage done. All that I saw, Boyle said, unless you count the bastard spinning around in the air. If I could have held it, focused it better, I might have destroyed it. Branagh dismissed that with a shrug. If it was that easy, I'd have done it myself before this. You did well. Finish it out now. Listening, nodding, Branagh didn't interrupt again. Yes, you did well indeed. I tell you it was a big risk, but I can't question your instincts. They told you this was the way, and you followed them. You're safe and well. I think you took Cavan off guard, and you cost him. It may be you hurt him a bit as well, if his power source, the jewel is that, I think, lessened. How did it feel? Enormous, like I could feel every cell in my body burning, like nothing could stop me. At that, Branagh's brows drew together. There's the danger as true as the wolf. I think I know. Part of feeling that invincibility was why I couldn't control it or started to lose it and let it control me. It's a vital lesson learned. It's that being engulfed by the power, the thirst for more of it, that made Cavan. Iona thought she understood how that could be, how the temptation, the seduction of such great power could overwhelm. Boyle talked me down. He helped me hold it, calm it, and finally stop it. Now those eyebrows rose. Is that the way of it? That's no small feat to rein in a witch who's not only reaping a whirlwind, but riding one. Otherwise, the pair of you would be roaming about Oz looking for ruby slippers. But I'd be the good witch. I'm relieved you weren't hurt, either of you. And I'm thinking we might have a space of time before he makes another lunge at us to smooth out more rough edges. I'm proud of you, she added, then rose. Simple words, simply spoken, but they poured into Iona like fine wine. Thanks. I have a thing or two to see to in the workshop now that my head's clear, Branagh continued. I'll tell Connor all of this, and as he came at you when you were with Boyle, it's best if we tell Mara the whole of it as well. And Finn, she added before Boyle could. We'll meet again, would you say, in a day or two, once we've all had time to think it all through. I think that's the right thing, Iona said. We're stronger together, right, than separately? I'll hope. See you at breakfast, Boyle, Branagh said with a wink, then left them. Oh, well, I don't know as I should. You should. Now Iona got to her feet, held out a hand. You really should. Come upstairs with me, Boyle. The wanting was so steep he couldn't climb out of it. He stood, took her hand, and went upstairs with her. Under strict orders to report to Branagh's workshop directly from the stables, and with Boyle busy in a meeting with Finn, Iona tapped Mara for a ride home. I have to get a car. She frowned at the winding, narrow road Mara zoomed along as if it were a 6-lane highway. A cheap car, a cheap, reliable car. I can put the word out on that. Yeah, that'd be good. Then I have to learn how to drive on the wrong side of the road. It's you Yanks who drive on the wrong side and can put the fear of God into a person just driving out to do the weekly marketing. I bet. But why do you guys drive on the left? I read it was about having the right hand free for the sword, but it's been a really long time since people needed to battle it out on horseback with swords. You never know, do you? Most don't battle it out on horseback with whirlwinds, as a rule. You got me there. Maybe I can talk Boyle into letting me drive some tomorrow. He's going to take me around to some sights. I've been so buried in work and lessons, I haven't seen anything outside of that and the village. Not really. A day off's good for the soul, but it'll take considerable talk of the very sweetest nature and very likely promises of exotic sexual favours to convince Boyle to let anyone behind the wheel but himself. I'm a good driver, she insisted, or was when the steering wheel was on this side, and as everyone know, I'm in the position to offer Boyle sex. Anyone with eyes. If there'd been more opportunity today, I'd have pulled more out of you about the whirlwind business and the sex, but we had too many people about for it. You could come in, Iona said as Mara pulled up at the workshop. Then Branna couldn't dump me right into more work, and I could give you lots and lots of details. Why is it so entertaining to have a window into others' sexual adventures? Maybe so we don't have to deal with the upheaval of them in our own lives. In any case, Mara continued before Iona could think of an answer, I'll be all ears, that's for certain, but I've errands need doing. No, I could meet you at the pub later with my ears, unless you're already planning more adventures with Boyle. I could squeeze in time for a drink with a friend. Do you believe in reincarnation? Sure, that's a question. Mara shoved back her cap. Where did it come from? I was wondering why some connections seem so easy, so natural, as if they'd already been made and are just getting picked up again. It's the way it worked for me with you, with Branna and Connor, with Boyle, even Finn. I guess I don't discount anything. You don't when your best friend in the world's a witch. But I think a big part of that is you're open to those connections. You reach for them, you do. It's hard not to reach back, even when you're not the reaching type in general. You're not? Not as a rule, no. I keep my circle tight, less upheaval, so to speak. Then I'm glad you widened it for me. See you at the pub? A couple hours? That'll do fine. Thanks for the lift. Iona jumped out, shot back a wave. She liked the idea of being open to connections, and the prospect of meeting a friend for a drink. Maybe she could talk Branna into joining them, a kind of impulsive girls' night out. Then maybe she'd get lucky and top it off with a little adventure with Boyle. Pleased with the plan, she swung through the door. Let the lesson begin. Then we can... Oh, sorry. I didn't see you had company. A customer. She hesitated at the doorway, not quite sure if she should go in or out, then recognized the woman standing at the work counter with her cousin. Oh, hi. I met you my first night at Ashford at the cottage. Your mixed daughter. Iona, she added when the woman simply stood there, flushed and staring. I remember, yes. My father speaks well of you. He's terrific. Just one more reason I love my job. Sorry to interrupt. I'll just go. No, it's not a problem at all. I've just finished. And thanks, Branna. I'll be on my way then. Best to Connor. She hurried out, pushing a little bottle into her coat pocket. Sorry, I know you do some business here, even though most of it's through the shop in the village. A bit here, a bit there. Branna tucked some euros into a drawer. Those who come here are often looking for what I don't sell in the village. Oh. I'm not a doctor, but I'm discreet. Still, in this case, I'll tell you, as it's hardly the secret Kayleen thinks it is, and there may come a time you'll be asked for the same. She lifted a ladle, poured a pale gold cream from bowl to bottle through a funnel, and touched the air with the scent of honey and almonds. There's a fine-looking Italian come over to work at his uncle's restaurant in Galway City. Our Kayleen met him a few weeks ago at a party, and they've been seeing each other a bit. I met him myself when they came into the shop, and he's charming as a prince and twice as handsome." She continued to work as she spoke, filling her bottles, then wiping them clean before sealing them with the stoppers. "Kayleen's mad in lust for him, and who could blame her for it? I'd have a go at him myself if I was in the market. Others feel the same, and it appears he's fine with that situation. And who could blame him?" she added, tying a thin gold ribbon around the bottle's neck. "But Kayleen doesn't want to share, and feels the handsome Italian only requires a bit of a boost to pledge to her alone. She had in mind I'd give her the boost." "I'm not following." Brianna set the finished bottle in a box for transporting. "A love spell was her request, and she was willing to pay 100 hard-earned for it." "A love spell? Can you do that?" "Can and will are different matters entirely. There are ways, of course. There are always ways, and there's nothing more dangerous or filled with pain and regret as spells that involve the heart." "You told her no, because it's taking someone's choice away, and because you're not supposed to use magic for gain." Hands quick and clever, Branna tied the next ribbon. "Every spell's for gain, one way or the other. You want something or believe in something, want to protect or block or vanquish. This cream here, it'll make the skin smooth and fragrant, and it can lift the ego of the one wearing it, as well as draw a response from the one catching its scent. I create it, someone buys it, and I'm paid. That's gain as well." "I guess that's a way to think about it." "It is. As for choice, there are times we do that as well, however well-intentioned, and so we have to be willing to pay the price, for magic's not free." She looked up then, met Iona's eyes with her smoky ones. "Not for us, not for any." "Then why did you say no?" "Emotions are magic of their own, aren't they? Love and hate, the strongest and most powerful. It's my philosophy that you don't tamper with feelings, don't push them in one direction or the other, not with power. The risk is great. What if the love is already there, about to bloom? You push it along, maybe it opens to obsession. Or the one who paid for the spell has a change of mind or heart, or there's another who loves and would be loved and is now shunted aside by magical means. So many ors and ifs there. I don't play with love spells or their kin. You'll make up your mind where you stand on it, but it's, to me, an unethical and risky line to cross. Unethical, yes, and even more, it just wouldn't be fair. For Iona, that was even more important. And yeah, I get what you're saying. A lot of magic isn't fair, but love should be, I don't know, sacred. People have to be able to love who they love, and not to love when they don't. So I said no, and always will." "What did you sell her instead?" "Truth. She'll decide if she makes use of it. If she does, they'll both be able to say what they feel, and want, and expect. If not, she can go along enjoying what is for as long as it lasts. I think she won't use it. She has a fear of magic, and she's not ready for truth. If she loved him, she'd want the truth." Branna smiled, slipped the next bottle into the box. "Ah, and there you have it. She's a bit besotted and wildly in lust, but not anywhere near the borders of love. She only wishes to be. Love doesn't break under the truth, even when you want it to." The door opened, Cahill trotted in, and Finn followed. "Ladies?" He pushed back his wind-tossed hair. "I heard we had a bit of trouble." "You're all right, darling," he said to Iona. "Yes, fine." "I'm glad of it, and still I'd like the details of it all, and what's being planned in the certainty there'll be another attack." "Boyle didn't come with you?" "He's dealing with the farrier, and Connor's out on a hawk walk, so it's left the two of you to deal with me on this." "Boyle was there as well." Branna carried the box to a shelf in the back. "He'll have as many details as Iona." "He sees it from his eyes. I want hers." "We've work, Finn. She needs more knowledge, more practice." "Then I'll help you with it." As if it was already accepted, he shrugged out of his coat. "We have different techniques, you and I." "So we do, and Iona would only benefit from seeing and trying the differences." This habit of talking about me in the third person when I'm right here is getting really old, Iona decided. And rude, Finn said with a nod. You're right. I'd like to help, and once we're done with the work, I'd very much like if you'd tell me exactly what happened and how you left it, from your eyes, Iona, if you will. I'm supposed to meet Mara later, but Iona glanced back at Branna, watched her cousin sigh, shrug. We could ask her to come here, and Boyle, too. It would be smart, I think, to have us all here, go through it once and for all, and talk about what comes next. All right, then. I can have dinner brought in. You've no need to cook for a horde again, Branna. I've sauce I put on an hour ago for pasta. It'll stretch easily enough. I'll ring up the others, then. He drew out his phone. Then we'll get started. 14. It felt good and it felt right to have everyone together again. Everyone tucked into the roomy kitchen with good cooking smells, voices carrying over voices, the dog sprawled at the hearth. It made the normal to Iona's mind, despite the dark and light of the paranormal. She tossed a big salad, kind of her specialty. She did pretty well in the kitchen as long as it didn't involve actually cooking. So she felt good and right, and with the increased push on her lessons with Branna, strong. Even the recounting of the altercation with the wolf once again reminded her of the power in the blood at her fingertips and made her feel confident. It's bold, isn't it? Mara commented as she slathered herbed butter over thick slices of baguette. To come at the pair of you that way, in the daylight, and so close to Ashford. I'm thinking it wasn't planned. Connor nipped a slice of bread from the baking tray before Mara could slide it into the oven to toast, but more he saw an opportunity and took it without the planning. Maybe to frighten more than harm, Finn suggested. To harm, certainly, if that opportunity opened. You were having a nice, easy ride, relaxed, and not on guard, Boyle nodded. A mistake we won't be making again. It's a kind of terrorism, isn't it? Finn carried the big bowl of salad to the table. The constant threat, the not knowing when or where it may come, and the disruption of the normal rhythm of things. Sure, he's the one who bore the brunt of it. Branna dumped drained pasta in a cheerful blue and white bowl and got his arse kicked by a witch barely out of the cupboard. Satisfying. But as Finn spoke, Iona caught the quick look he shared with Branna. But what? He's come after you twice. Here, sit now, get started, Branna ordered, and both times he's been sent off with his tail between his legs. He underestimated her, Boyle said as he took his seat. No doubt of that, and little that he'll do so again. Branna handed the salad set to Mara. Dish it up, I'll turn the bread. She could follow the dots, Iona thought, especially when they were so clearly marked. You think he'll come after me again, specifically. It's you coming here that set things in motion that held for hundreds of years. There's apples in here, Connor discovered as he sampled the salad. It's nice. So if he scares her off, at least, and back to America, Mara frowned, what does that do? I'm not sure it matters now. She's the third. Branna brought the bread to the table, sat to have her salad. And he knows it, as we do now. Her power has opened, and wider and faster than he, or I for that matter, had anticipated. The cork's not going back in that bottle. While she appreciated the compliment, Iona continued to follow the dots into a very uneasy place. But if he kills me, or either of you? Pain's better. Connor ate with obvious enjoyment and spoke with something kin to cheer, or seduction. Those lead to turning, and by turning any of us he gains more power. Killing outright, he'd get some, but far from all. Still, he might try it out of frustration or spite. There's a happy thought, Mara muttered. If that's true, why hasn't he gone for either of you long before I got here? Oh, he's made a few swipes from time to time, but no scars. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, Connor winced. I'm sorry for that, Finn. It's no matter. He couldn't know, as none of us could know, the three of you were the three. Not until you came, Iona, and the links clicked together. And the amulets helped to shield, Branna added. And if he did away with me or Connor, there'd be another. There's O'Dwyer's aplenty. Not like you. Boyle spoke quietly. Nor like Connor, or you, he said to Iona. You knew, Finn, it would be this 3, and this time. Only for certain when I saw the horse. I saw you on him, Finn said to Iona, astride the stallion under a moon so full and white it seemed to pulse against the black sky like a bright heart. I saw fire in your hands and power in your eyes. You said nothing of this before. Finn glanced at Branna. I bought the horse because I knew it was hers. I didn't know when you'd come, not for certain, he said to Iona, only that you would, and you'd have need of Alistair, and he of you. What else have you seen? Branna demanded. His face shuttered. Too much and not enough. I'm not looking for riddles, Finbar. You're looking for answers, as you always do, and I don't have them. I've seen the fog spread, as you have, seen him watching from the shadows, a shadow himself. I've seen you under that same bright moon, glowing like 1,000 stars, with the wind flying through your hair and blood on your hands. I've wondered if it was mine. Saying nothing, Branna rose to go to the stove, to pour the simmering sauce in a bowl. I don't know what it means, Finn continued, or how much is real and true, how much is wondering. When the time comes, it'll be his blood spilled. The cheer left Connor's voice. Now there was only a hard edge, a lick of temper. Brother, I am his blood. He doesn't own you. With her shoulders very straight, her eyes very direct, Iona looked at Finn. And feeling sorry for yourself isn't helping. He's been around waiting for hundreds of years, she continued in a practical tone as Branna shot her a quietly approving look over her shoulder. What the hell has he been doing for centuries? Finn thinks he goes back and forth when he's a mind to, between times, or worlds, or both, Boyle added. How does he... Oh, the cabin, the ruins, the place behind the vines. If he can do that, why doesn't he kill Sorka before she burns him to ashes? He can't change what was. Her magic was as powerful as his, maybe more, Finn speculated, before she took ill, before he killed her man. It's her, I think, who spellbound the place, protects it still. What was, and can't be altered. I've tried myself. Well, now, you're full of secrets, aren't you, then? Branna dropped the bowls on the table, snatched up the salad to put it aside. If I could have finished what she started and ended him, it would be done. But so would you, Iona pointed out. Maybe, I think. Time paradoxes are paradoxical. In any case, I couldn't change it. My power was there, I felt it, but it made no matter, and I couldn't hold my place, if you take my meaning. It all wavered and brought me back where I'd started. You could have been lost, Connor reminded him. Taken somewhere or some time else entirely. I wasn't. I think it's like a string of wire from then to now, and there's no veering off from the wire. But there's a lot of years on the wire, Iona mused. Maybe it's a matter of finding the right spot. Change one thing that was, it all changes. And you should know better, Branna said to Finn. I was young and foolish. He sent Iona a quick smile. And feeling sorry for myself. Now that I'm older and wiser, I see it's not any one of us who'll end him or the curse he carries, but all of us. What if we all went back? Connor paused in ladling sauce over his pasta to study Boyle. All of us together? Maybe it would change things, but we don't know when he'll try to harm any one of us, or what else he might do. I don't know why you can't change what was, or why you shouldn't try when what was is something evil. It's a slippery hill to climb, Boyle. Branna twirled pasta, untwirled, twirled it again. Some ask if you had the way and means, wouldn't you go back and kill Hitler? Oh, the thousands of lives saved, and so many innocent. But one of those lives saved might be worse and more powerful than Hitler ever dreamed. But don't you try all the same. A lot of years on the wire, as Iona said. Can't we find the time, the place, take the battle to him? A time and place we know won't wink Finn out of existence. Thanks for that. I'm used to you, Boyle shot back to Finn, and have no desire to run the businesses on my own. Is there not some magic the four of you can devise to give us the best chance of it? We may not come back to the world we left, if we come back at all, Branna insisted. Maybe we'd come back to better. He's a shadow in this time, as Finn said. Shadows fade in the light. Mara lifted her wine. That's something to consider. I may not be able to conjure a spell, but I know basic physics. Is it physics? Well, action-reaction, yes. And I know it's always better to take the enemy by surprise, on ground of your choosing. You'd go? Iona asked. I mean, if we could and would. Well, now, unless I had a hot date lined up. It's not a joke, Mara. Mara reached over, rubbed a hand on Branna's arm. You've carried the weight long enough. Time to spread it around. Saying we're a circle and really meaning it are different matters, Branna. You can't protect us all, so let's protect each other. We could think on it, on how to find that time and place, and block him from knowing it, and how to make the time and place here and now, or here and when we've found the answer to destroying him once and for good. She'll study and think and work, Iona said quietly to Boyle as they cleared the table, and worry. I wonder sometimes if there'd be less work and worry all around if I hadn't come. It's been an axe dangling over their heads long before that, and you did come. I don't think much about what's meant, but it seems you were meant to come. It needs to end sometime, doesn't it? Why not now, and with us? I'm not a big fan of procrastination. She thought it over as she wiped the table clean, kept her voice down under the clatter of dishes being loaded into the washer. I just like plowing through to whatever's next, but I think I could happily push all of this into a box in a corner for a couple 100 years. Someone's got to shovel the shit. And we've got the shovels. Yeah, Iona conceded. Might as well put our backs into it. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and not just to get out and see the world beyond a 2-mile radius of Ashford. It's kilometres here. I have a feeling I'll master Irish easier than the metric system. I think getting a better sense of the area beyond our little core of it might be helpful. Plus, I have an exceptional guide. We'll be seeing about that. Take the moments, she thought, every moment of normal, of happiness and ease. I want ruins and old cemeteries and green hills and sheep. You don't have to ramble far for any of that. But I'll be rambling with you. Turning, she wrapped her arms around his waist. She felt him shift, that subtle move of embarrassment, though the clatter and chatter continued around them. And because she found it endearing, she added to it by raising to her toes and giving him a quick kiss. I could drive for a while. Practice the on-the-left thing before I buy a car. I think no, most firmly. I know how to drive a truck. You know how to drive a truck on the right when you're counting the miles, but you don't know how to drive a lorry on the left when you're clicking off kilometres. He had her there. That's the point. You could teach me. Best you try that with someone less volatile, Branna suggested. She means someone less likely to shout blue murder if you clip a hedgerow or veer off the wrong direction on a roundabout, Mara explained. You're better off with Connor, as he's long on patience. I'll need be no longer than a thumbnail to have more patience than Boyle. I'll take you out on the road, cousin, first chance we have for it. Thanks. And if you're after buying a car, I've a friend in Hollymount in the trade who'd make you a fair deal. Connor's friends everywhere. He merely smiled at Mara. Sure, I'm a friendly sort. And all the girls attest to it. I should be off. You'll text me if you devise some grand scheme, she said to Branna. I've some thoughts to put together. I'll let you know when I have them sorted out. Have a care, Mara added a hug. I could use a care as well. Lifting her eyebrows at Connor, Mara tapped his cheek. Enjoy your rambling, Iona, and you and Boyle have a care as well. And you, Finn. I'll walk out with you. "I've some thoughts of my own to put together," he said to Branna. "We might consider Letha." She nodded. "I am. Isn't that— Yes, that's the summer solstice," Iona remembered. "Not till June?" "A bit of time yet. Light smothers dark, and it's the longest day, which we may use to our advantage. I have to think about it." "Would you rather I stay here tomorrow, work with you?" "No, go rambling. You're right that it's good for you to have a better sense of the world around this core of it. And I need to have that time to think. Why don't we give you some peace, then?" Boyle suggested. "I'll come fetch you, Iona, about 9. "You could, or I could go with you now, and we can leave from your place whenever you're ready." She smiled at him. He didn't shift, but she sensed he wanted to. "They all know we're sleeping together." "Is that a fact?" Connor feigned surprise. "And here I thought you've been having a chess tournament and discussing world events." "You're a rare one," Boyle muttered. "We can leave from my house if you'd rather. Just don't take half the night getting together what you need, as we'll be tramping around rubble and gravestones." "I packed a bag already, just in case." "Call me," she told Branna, "if you need me for anything. Just have a good time of it." She moved them along, friends and family, up to waving them away from the front door of the cottage, and stood there a moment longer in the chilly dark. "All right, then. It's just you and me, as you wanted." Connor laid a hand on her shoulder. "What is it?" He wouldn't look, Branna thought. Though she knew how to block him, he wouldn't draw on her heart or mind. He'd consider it an intrusion. "I don't mean to cut Iona out, and she's proven herself, God knows. But you're still getting used to her, and used to the others all being part of it. Makes you feel tight in your skin, doesn't it, all these people crowding you?" How he knew her, she thought, and thank all the gods for it, and him. "It does, yes. How we ever came from the same parents is a wonder. Nothing suits you more than a crowd, and nothing suits me less. Keeps us balanced. Seems it does, and I'm thinking balance might be the thing. Ostera, the equinox, the balance of day to night, rather than the solstice. I've thought of it, as obviously you have as well, but the time's just too short to prepare it all, as it's nearly on us. I didn't think her ready, our Iona," he admitted, "but I wonder if I was wrong about that. She needs more seasoning, to my mind, and deserves it as well. The solstice is close enough, and that's a kind of balance as well, that tipping point of the year. It may be a chance, if you'd work with me a bit now, just putting our heads together." He touched his forehead to hers. "A ritual, a spell of balancing and banishing at the moment day holds longest, then slides into its ebbing. There, you see, I don't have to explain to you, so it goes easier. What you're thinking won't come within a league of easy, but it might work. We'll see what we can put together. Just us two for now, and the rest soon enough." They went to the workshop together, with Branna trying not to feel guilty over the relief that it was just the two of them, at least for now. "I embarrassed you," Iona said while they made the short drive to Boyle's. "What? No, I'm not embarrassed." "A little. I probably should have said something about staying with you tonight when there weren't other people around. I never think about things like that. And it occurred to me too late to consider you might not have wanted company." "You've stopped being company." What did it say about her that she found the careless comment romantic? Oh well. "Then it occurred to me you'd have no problem saying no, and you'd pick me up in the morning." "Do I look thick-headed to you?" "Not a bit." "I'd have to be not to want to spend the night with you, wouldn't I?" More romance, she thought, Boyle McGrath style. But I shouldn't have announced it like the minutes of the next meeting, if we took minutes. It's a private thing. I get that, and it would be, or I'd try harder there. But it seems to me the way things are, privacy's not really on the table. That's harder for you than it is for me. It may be, but you're right. There are more immediate things to worry about. He pulled in right behind Finn, jiggled his keys as he got out. "Good night, then," Finn called out. And enjoy tomorrow. I'll have my mobile if there's a need." Iona bumped against Boyle as they climbed the stairs to his rooms. "It is harder on you, but Finn's got to be used to you bringing a date back with you now and then, and you with him doing the same." "I don't bring women here, as a rule," he said after a moment. Oh, privacy, she thought, and more. If you go to their place, you can leave when you want. There's that. He stepped inside. "You need to tell me when you want me to go. I'd rather be told than tolerated." "I don't tolerate much." He tossed his keys in a bowl. "I'm not tolerating you." It made her smile. "Good. Don't. It's miserable to be tolerated." He set her little bag on a chair. "If I didn't want you here, you'd be somewhere else. Do you want something to drink?" "I thought I wasn't company anymore." "You're right." He grabbed her the way she liked, pulled her through to the bedroom. "You can get your own drink after." "I'll get you one, too." She yanked his jacket off his shoulders and away. "Boots," she said, and made him laugh. "I'm aware of the order of things." And still they dived toward the bed, pulling, tugging, then tossing Boots. "We broke something last time," she remembered as she rushed to unbutton his shirt. "What was it?" "My grandmother's crystal vase." Her fingers stilled, her eyes widened in distress. Then he grinned. "Oh, liar!" She threw a leg over him, shoved him onto his back. "You're going to pay for that." Crossing her arms, she grabbed the hem of her sweater, pulled it over her head, winged it over her shoulder. "I'll pay more," he told her. He slid his hands up her sides, over her breasts as she fought open the last buttons. "You bet you will, buddy." She lowered her head, catching his mouth in a crushing kiss before scraping her teeth over his bottom lip, ending with a nip. He retaliated by flipping her over, doing the same. They wrestled off clothes, wrestled each other in a rush of give and take. So much the same, she thought, wonderfully the same, but how she knew what they could bring to each other. All heat and demand and speed, like flying through fire, simmers and flashes and bursts. She reveled in the thrill of skin sliding against skin, his to hers, hers to his, the heady friction of it. His mouth dark with hunger, his hands rough with greed, raced over her. How had she lived without knowing what it was to be wanted so completely, so urgently, so thoroughly? She needed to give him the same, to show him how the want for him flooded through her. He couldn't get enough of her. Whatever he took only sparked a bright, hot need for more. When he had her like this, moving in the dark, he couldn't think, could only feel. And she made him feel drunk, half mad with it, made him feel strong as a god, reckless as a cornered wolf. The world outside dissolved, time spun away. Just her body, the shape of her, those sleek muscles under smooth skin, the sound of her, breath and sigh and soft, soft moan, and her taste, so hot and sweet. She struggled up, fast hands, quick legs to straddle him, and starlight caught in the crown of her hair like diamonds. She took him in, fast and deep, her hands pressed to her own breasts as the first wave of ecstasy swamped her. Then she rode, free and wild, starlight on her skin, dark triumph in her eyes. He gripped her hips, clinging to her and some last thread of sanity, and she lifted her arms high, crying out in that same dark triumph. Flames shimmered at her fingertips, tiny pinpoints of light that flashed, bright and blinding as the sun. Stunned by them, bewitched by her, he held on, and he let go. In the dark, in the dream, she reached for him. "Do you hear that? Do you hear that?" "It's just the wind." "No." The woods were so thick, the night so black. Where was the moon? Why was there no moon, no stars? And with a shudder she understood. "It's in the wind." Her name, the seductive pull of the whisper, a stroke of silk on bare skin. "You need to sleep." But I am, aren't I? When she shivered again, he rubbed her chilled hands between his. We should have a fire. It's so dark. It's too dark, too cold. I know the way home. Don't fret now. He began to guide her through the trees, away from the little licks of fog that flicked, sly as the tongue of a snake, along the ground. Don't let go, she said as the whispers slid and stroked over her skin. The way's blocked, d'you see? He gestured to the thick branches blocking the path. I'll need to move them before we can get through. No! On a spur of panic, she gripped his hand tighter. It's what he wants, just like before, to separate us. We have to stay together, we have to hold on. The way's blocked, Iona. He turned her now, looked into her eyes. His were dark gold, intense, unwavering. We should have a fire. The fog's closer. Can you hear it? The wolf now, just the faintest growl through the black, through the fog. I hear it. Fire, Iona. It's what we need. Fire, she thought, against the dark, against the cold. Fire, of course. She threw her arms out, lifted her face up, and called it, strong, bright, with a whip snap that lashed through the creeping fog, made it boil, made it steam and die to thin black ash. To the dark I bring the light, against the black I forge the white. From my blood I call the fire to burn, to flame higher and higher. Awake or in dreams, my power runs free. As I will, so mote it be. A curl of fog snuck out, slithered close. Boyle lunged in front of Iona, threw out a fist. He felt a quick pain across his knuckles. Then both fog and ash vanished, and there was only fire and light. She saw blood well up across Boyle's hand, and woke with a jolt. Morning, she saw now, the pearly promise of it glowing against the window. A dream. Just a dream. And she took a breath to steady herself. When Boyle sat up beside her, she reached for his hand and saw the blood. Oh, God! In the woods, together, his fingers curled tight over hers. Is that how it was? She nodded. It's a kind of astral projection, I think. We're here, but we were there. I must have pulled you in with me. You hid out at the fog. It worked, and felt fine as well, though your fire did more. No. Yes, I don't know. You struck out, and it was like you punched a hole for a moment. But you're bleeding. Sure, it's but a scratch. No, it's from him. I don't know if it's just a scratch. She could call on Connor or Branna, but she felt somehow this was for her to do. I need to fix it. Just needs a quick wash and ointment if you're going to fuss about it. Not that way. Her heart beat so fast now, faster, she realized, than it had, even through the fear of the dream. He bled, and it was Kavan who'd drawn that blood. It's an unnatural wound. I've studied it, if you'll trust me. She laid her hand over the shallow gash, closed her eyes. She saw his hand, strong, broad, the fascinating scarred knuckles from his boxing days, the blood, and deeper, looking deeper, the thin black line of Kavan's poison, just as she'd feared. Draw it out, she told herself. Out and away, white against black again, light against dark, out and away before it sank deeper, before it could spread. She felt it go, little by little, felt it burn away. She knew by the way his hand stiffened it caused him pain, but now the wound ran clean. Slowly, carefully, she set to the healing of the shallow gash. Now the pain, small, sharp stings were hers, but they faded. Just a scratch, as he'd said, once the poison had been drawn out. She opened her eyes, found his on her. You've gone pale. It took some doing. My first try at this kind of thing. Her head spun a little, and her stomach did a couple of slow rolls. But the wound was clean, and it was closed. She studied his hand, satisfied. He used poison. I don't know if it would have done anything, but it might have spread. It wasn't much, but it's gone now. You could have Connor take a look. Boyle continued to study her as he flexed his fingers. I'd say you did well enough. I don't know if he expected me to pull you with me, and I don't know how I did, but you told me what needed to be done. The fire, you told me, and it worked. Burned him to ashes. Well, wouldn't be the first time, and I really don't think it's the last. No, not the last of it. I'd say I'm sorry I dragged you into that, but I'm awfully glad you were with me. It was an experience for certain. One that left him shaken, and more, puzzled him. During it, he'd felt such calm and such absolute faith she would do what needed to be done. It seemed like a dream, he continued, the way your mind can be a bit slow and you don't question the oddities. I'll do a charm for the bed, or better, have Branna do one. It should help. I hurt him. Again, Boyle flexed his fingers. He wasn't expecting a punch, I'm thinking. I know when one lands well, and it did. I'm thinking as well the poison was for you. Could I have pulled you back out, as you did me? Do you know that? And if I did that, could I have gotten you to Connor in time to deal with the poison, if I'd thought to? You knew what to do. Instinctively, she lifted her hands to rub at his shoulders, found them knotted. You knew we needed fire, and you stayed so calm. I needed you to stay calm. I'm going to believe you know what to do if and when he comes at us again. She let out a long breath. I'm starving. I'll go fix breakfast. I'll do it. You're a terrible cook. That's so entirely true. Fine, you cook. I'll give Branna a call. Tell her, just in case. Are we still on for that rambling? I don't see what this changes about it. Great. I'll grab a shower, then call Branna. It's early, and she'll be less cranky with another 15 minutes sleep. I'll put the kettle on. But he picked up his phone first, and while she ran the shower, punched in Finn's number. He'd sooner know what Finn had to say before he fried up the bacon. 15. It was the country of her blood, and as she watched it rise and fall and spread outside the truck window, Iona understood it was the country of her heart. It settled into her like a sip of whiskey on a cold night, warm and comforting. Green hills rolled under a sky layered with clouds stacked like sheets of linen. The sun shimmered through them, making intermittent swirls of blue, luminous as opals. Fat cows and woolly sheep dotted emerald fields bisected with rough hedgerows or silvery grey rock walls. Farmhouses, barns, pretty little cottages scattered over the land with postcard charm as the road twisted and curved. Dooryard gardens reached for spring, with brave blooms opening in wild blues, sassy oranges, delicate whites, topped here and there by the heralding trumpets of daffodils. She would have spring in Ireland, Iona thought, the first of a lifetime, and like those brave flowers, she determined to bloom. The road might turn, curve out like a tunnel with high hedgerows of wild fuchsia hugging the sides of the twists, the turns, with their blooms dripping like drops of blood. Then the world opened again to the hills, the fields, and thrillingly the shadows of mountains. How do you stand it? Iona wondered. Doesn't it constantly dazzle your eyes, take your breath, make your heart ache? It's home, Boyle said simply. There's nowhere I'd rather be. It suits me. Oh, me too. And finally, she thought, she felt she suited it. The wind kicked and a splatter of rain struck the windshield. Then the sun ran behind it to turn the drops into tiny rainbows. Magic, Iona thought, simple and mysterious. As was Ballintubber Abbey. Its clean lines lent a quiet dignity to the old grey stone. It made its home on pretty grounds backed with fields of sheep spread before the green hills, the loom of mountains. Simple grandeur, she thought, finding the oxymoron the perfect description of the ancient and the life going quietly on around it. She climbed out of the truck to study the pathways, the gardens defying winter's last shivers, and smiled as the breeze carried the baaing of sheep. She thought she could sit on the grass and spend an entire day happily just looking, just listening. I suppose you'll be wanting the history of the place. She'd read some of it in her guide, but enjoyed the idea of Boyle giving her his take. "I wouldn't mind." "Well, it was Connachor who built it, Cahal Mór of the Wine-Red Hand, of the O'Connor clan, so he'd be one of yours." Oh, of course. How deep her blood ran here, she thought, and how marvellous was that. Like Ashford, before the Burkes won it. There you are. Back in 1216 it was. I know the date, as they're after restoring the East Wing, I think it is, for its 800-year celebration. And so the legend, or one of them, says, while Cahal was the son of King Turlough, he was forced to flee from Turlough's queen and spend some time labouring and in hiding before he took the throne. And there was a man who treated him kindly, and Cahal, now king, asked him what he could do to repay him. It was a church that the man, now old, wanted, in Ballintubber, and so Cahal ordered it built. They walked the path as he told the tale, with his voice rising and falling on the words, the sheep baaing their chorus. Ridiculously happy, Iona took Boyle's hand to link them, to seal the moments. After some years, the king saw the old man again and was scolded for not keeping his word. It seems the church had been built right enough, but in Roscommon. Laughing, Iona looked up at him. Oops. So you could say, but Cahal ordered another church built, and it came to be Ballintubber Abbey. A man of his word, so it said. I like knowing I have a grateful and honest king in my ancestry, and it's a lasting legacy, as it's said to be the only church in Ireland founded by an Irish king and still in use. I think that's wonderful. People too often knock down the old for the new instead of understanding that legacy. What comes before now matters, he said simply. Pierce Brosnan was married here a few years back, and that's been a newer claim to fame. Older, it's the start of Turcher Fodrig, the pilgrimage route to St. Patrick's Mountain. I read about that. It's also said Sean na Soggart, who was a nefarious priest-hunter, is buried in the cemetery. There, Boyle pointed his hand to point to a large tree. So it's said. It's a good place. Clean, powerful, and I feel this recognition somewhere deep, this connection. Is that weird? He only shrugged. Your blood built it. So you made it our first stop. Smiling, she leaned her head against his arm. Thanks. She glanced down at an old pitted stone and its carving. The crowning? Oh, well, they've more than the abbey and the graves and such. That's part of the stations. They've added that, a rosary walk, and over there a little cave that's fashioned as a stable for the nativity. It's a bit odd. It's wonderful. Tugging his hand, she followed the path, finding other stones and markers among the trim and pretty gardens. It's so abstract, so contemporary, and a really creative contrast against the antiquity. She paused at a little stream, its bank blanketed with low, spreading bushes as it rose to rough stones. 3 crosses topped it to represent the crucifixion. It should be sad, and I know it should be reverent. It is, but it's more compelling. And then this. She stepped into the cave to look over the statues of Mary, Joseph, the baby Jesus. It's wonderful, too. Sweet and a little kitschy. I think Cahal would like what's been done. He's made no objections that I know of. They went inside, and there she found hushed reverence. The Cromwellians set fire to the place, Boyle told her. You can see from the ruins outside the monastery that the quarters and such fell, but the church stood, and still does. The baptismal area there, they say, is 1,000 years old. It's comforting, isn't it, to know the things we build can survive. It's beautiful. The stained glass, the stone. The way her footsteps echoed in the quiet only added to the atmosphere. You know a lot about it, she commented. Did you study up? Didn't have to. I had an uncle worked here on some of the repairs and improvements. So my blood built it, and yours helped keep it. That's another connection. True enough. And I've had 2 cousins and a couple of mates married here, so I've been around and about it a few times. It's a good place for a wedding. The continuity, the care, the respect, and the romance. Tales of kings and priest hunters, Cromwellians and James Bond. He laughed at that, but she only smiled. She felt something here, a kinship, a recognition, and now a kind of knowing. She'd come here before, she realized, or her blood had come, to sit, perhaps, in that quiet reverence. Candles and flowers, light and scent, and music, women in pretty dresses and handsome men. She wandered again, painting it in her mind. A fretful baby being soothed, a shuffle of feet, joy, anticipation, and love making a promise. Yes, it's a good place for a wedding. She wanted it for hers, this place of age and contrast and endurance. She went back to him, took his hand again. Promises made here would matter, and they'd hold if the ones making them believed it. Back outside, she wandered the ruins, brushing her fingers over old stone, moved through the cemetery where the long dead rested. She took pictures to mark the day, and though he grumbled about it, persuaded Boyle to pose with her as she took a self-portrait with her cell phone. "I'll send it to my Nan," she told him. "She'll get a kick out of seeing—" "What is it?" The light. Do you see it?" She held out the phone to him. On the screen, they posed with her head tipped to his shoulder. She smiled easy, and Boyle more soberly, and light, white as candle wax, surrounded them. "The angle, maybe. A flash from the sun." "You know it's not." "It's not. No," he admitted. "It's this place," she murmured. "Founded by my blood, kept by yours. That's part of it. It's a good place, a strong place, a safe one. I think they came here, the three, and others that came from them. Now me. I feel welcome here. It's a good light, Boyle. It's good magic." She took his hand, studying the back of it where dark magic had spilled blood. "Connor said it was clean," he reminded her. "Yeah, light banishes shadows. Mara was right about that." Still holding his hand, she looked into his eyes. "But like promises made, the light has to believe it." "And do you?" "I do." She lifted her free hand to his face, rose on her toes to brush her lips to his. She believed it. Deep down in her belly, she carried faith and resolve, and her heart came to accept what she understood as she'd walked with him along the paths and tidy gardens that opened for spring, among the spirits and the legends, into the promise kept by one of hers. She loved, at last, loved as she'd always hoped. He was her once in a lifetime, and with him she had to learn patience and hold only to that faith as well, the faith that he would love as she loved. She put on her best smile. "What's next?" "Well, there's the Ross Abbey. Actually, it's a friary, Ross Airily. It's not far, and you'd probably like to poke about in it." "Bring it on." She glanced around as they walked to the truck and knew she'd come back, maybe to walk the stations or just stand in the breeze and look out at the fields. She'd come back as her blood had come. But now, as he drove away, she looked forward. She saw it from the road, the foreboding mass of it, its peaks and tower and rambling walls. Under the thick sky, it looked like something out of an old movie where creatures who shuffled in the dark hid and plotted. She couldn't wait to get a closer look. The truck bumped down a skinny track with pretty little houses on one side, laced with gardens with blooms testing the chill. The other side of the track spread with fields loaded with cows and sheep. Ahead, beyond the tidy and pastoral, loomed the ruins. "I didn't study up," he told her, "but I know it's old, of course. Not as old as the Abbey, but old for all that." She walked toward it, heard the whistle of the wind through the peaks and jut of stone, and the flapping of wings from birds, the lowing of cattle, the central tower speared up above the roofless walls. She stepped inside a doorway, and now her feet crunched on gravel, vaults for the dead, or stones for them, fixed flat into the ground. "I think the Brits kicked out the monks as they were wont. Then, as they were wont, the Cromwellians did the rest and sacked the place, pillaged and burned. It's massive. She stepped through an arch, looking up at the tower and the black birds that circled it. The air felt heavy. Rain to come, she decided. Wind blew through the arched windows, whistled down the narrow curve of stone steps. This must have been the kitchen. She didn't like the way her voice echoed, but moved closer to look down in what seemed to be some sort of dry well. "Stand over there." She gestured to the ox-roasting fireplace. He shuffled his feet, gave her a pained look. "I'm not much for pictures." "Indulge me. It's a big fireplace. You're a big guy." She snapped her pictures. They'd butcher their own meat, grow their own vegetables, mill flour, keep fish in the well there. The Franciscans. She wandered out, even at her height, ducking under archways, to an open area. A line of archways, gravestones, grass. The cloister, quiet thoughts, robes and folded hands. They looked so pious, but some had humor, others ambition, envy, greed, lust, even here. Iona. But she moved on, stopped at the base of steps where a Christ figure had been carved in the arch. Symbols are important. The Christians followed the pagans there, carving and painting their one God as the old ones carved and painted the many. Neither understand that the one is part of the many part of the one. Wind fluttered through her hair as she stepped out on a narrow balustrade. Boyle took her arm in a firm grip. "I died here, or my blood did. It feels the same. Breaking the journey home. Too old, too ill to continue on. Some would burn the witch, such is the time, but her power's gone quiet, and they take her in. She wears the symbol, but they don't know what it means. The copper horse." Iona's hand closed over her amulet. "But he knows. He smells her weakness. He waits, but must come to her. She can't finish the journey, and she feels him nearing, greedy for what she has left. He has less than he did, but enough, still enough. She has no choice now. It can't be done in the place of her power, at the source. He's whispering. Can you hear him? Come away, no." She turned. Her eyes had gone nearly black. "It's not done, and it must be done. She has her granddaughter, such love between them, and the power simmers in the young. She passes what she has, as the first did, as her own father had done with her, and with the power. She passes on the symbol. A burden, a stone in the heart. It's always been that for her, never with joy to balance it. So she passes power and symbol with grief. And the rooks flap their wings, the wolf howls on the hill, the fog creeps along the ground. She speaks her last words." Iona's voice rose, carried over the wind, in Irish. Above the layered clouds, something rumbled that might have been thunder, might have been power waking. The circling birds swooped away with frightened calls, leaving only sky and stone. "The bells tolled as if they knew," she continued. "Though the girl wept, she felt the power rise up, hot and white, strong, young, vital and fierce. So he was denied what he craved yet again, and again he waits." Iona's eyes rolled back. When she swayed, Boyle dragged her in close. "I have to leave here," she said weakly. "Bloody right." He plucked her off her feet, carried her down the narrow curving stairs, through archways where he nearly bent double to pass through, and out again, into the air and the patter of rain. The wet felt like heaven on her cheeks. "I'm okay, just a little dizzy. I don't know what happened." "A vision. I've seen Connor Cotton one." I could see them, the old woman, the girl, bathing her grandmother's face. Fever, she was so hot, like she was burning from the inside out. I could hear them, and him. I could hear him trying to get to her, trying to draw her out. I felt her pain, physical and emotional. She wished so much she could spare the girl she loved from the risk and responsibility, but there wasn't a choice, and there wasn't time. He shifted her to open the truck door, maneuvered her inside, amazed his hands didn't shake to mimic his heart. "You spoke in Irish." "I did?" Iona shoved at her hair. "I can't remember, not exactly. What did I say?" I'm not sure of it all. You're the one, but there must be three. And I think," he struggled with the translation, "it ends here for me, begins for you," something like that. And more I couldn't understand. Your eyes went black as a raven's, and your skin pale as death. "My eyes?" "They're back," he assured her, stroked her cheek. "Blue as summer. I need more training. It's like trying to compete in the Olympics when you're still learning how to change leads and gaits. And that's a potent place, full of energy and power." He'd been there before, felt nothing but some curiosity. But this time, with her, it hooked to you, he decided, or you to it. Or she did, the old woman. She's buried in there. One day we should come back, one day when this is finished, and leave flowers on her grave. At the moment, he wasn't inclined to bring her back ever, but as he walked around to get in the truck, the rain stopped. "Look." She took his hand, pointed with the other at the rainbow that glimmered behind the ruins. "Light winds." She smiled and meant it, and thinking rainbows, leaned over to kiss him. "I'm starving." He didn't think at all, but pulled her in again to kiss her until the image of her swaying on the ledge faded away. "I know a place not far that does a fine fish and chips, and Christ knows I could do with a pint. That's what I'm talking about." "Thanks," she added. "For what?" "For showing me two amazing places, and for catching me before I fell." She looked back at the friary, at the black birds, at the rainbow. Her life had forever changed, she thought, but unlike her ancestor, she considered it a gift. In the cozy kitchen, with the hound at her feet and a fire in the hearth, Iona told her cousins everything. "A busy day for you," Connor commented, "and then some. That would be 3 events, we'll call them, in a single day." Branna, her hair still bundled up from her workday, contemplated her tea. "But only the first involving Kavan. The last one, too," Iona reminded her. She felt him coming. "A vision of the past, whether yours or another's, still the past. I doubt he'd venture so far now." Branna looked at Connor. "Not now, no. And why should he?" "Tell me what you were feeling before, during, after the vision came on you." "Before, I'm not sure. I felt I'd been there before, like the Abbey, but not bright, not happy like that. It was dark and, well, sorrowful. I knew the layout, what things were, but I realized now it was her, our ancestor. I was thinking her thoughts, and some were pretty damn bitter. She knew she was dying, but more than death, she hated passing the amulet, the power, the responsibility, on to her granddaughter. I don't remember going up the steps. It seemed I was just there. The old woman in bed, grey hair streaked with white, her face grey too, and shiny with fever, and the girl sitting beside her, bathing her face. Long red hair. Emer. I think she called the young girl Emer. "You don't remember the Irish she spoke?" Connor prompted her. "No, just what Boyle thought it meant, or what he understood of it. I remember sorrow and fear, then the light just bursting into the room. For an instant, a sense of power, just wild, huge, like a really excellent orgasm. Then it all went grey and spinning, dizzy, weak, disoriented, and when that passed, hungry. The dizziness will ease after a time," Connor told her. "It's good you weren't alone when you had your first." "You weren't expecting this then?" he asked Branna. "Not yet. No, not yet. I want to say she's—" "You're," she corrected and addressed Iona directly, "accelerating. I think it's where you are and who you're with. We're 3 together, so what you have is coming ripe more quickly than it might otherwise. It's a good thing, this. You'll be stronger, less vulnerable. Should I expect any more surprises?" "You'll take them as they come. Let's backtrack a minute. The dream. Did Boyle and I share the dream because we were together?" "The sex." Connor leaned back, shot his legs out. "It's a powerful link, or can be." So if I have sex with Boyle, he can get dragged in with me? But it hurt him. His hand, the poison, which you tended to well. That's good instinct. But the next time it could be worse. You take it as it comes, Branna reminded her. Cavan hurt him, but Boyle hurt Cavan as well. Cavan felt the blow, a human blow and in a dream, and that's interesting to me. It was black, mixed in Boyle's blood. I could see it. If it had spread before, it didn't, Branna said briskly. We deal with what is. We can't cloud what is with what if and the emotions. She loves him. Connor rubbed a hand over Iona's when she jolted. Love clouds everything and shines through it as well. I never said How do you know what I just figured out? It's coming through you so strong I can't avoid seeing it. He gave her hand another rub. I don't mean to peek through the door, but it's wide open. I haven't said anything to him. Couldn't and shouldn't, she thought, reminding herself of her vow to be patient. I'm just sort of savoring it. I've wanted to feel this way for so long, tried to feel this way, and with Boyle, I didn't have to want or try, I just did. That's all well and good, and sure he's one of the best men I know, but you can't let what you have filter through the haze of love, Branna warned. We have different ways of thinking on that, Connor put in. I think love only adds to the power. Where she is, yes, he said to Branna, and being with us. But I'm thinking what she feels is another reason she's gaining so fast. How she knew the poison was in Boyle, and how she drew it out so clean when she'd never done the like before. I won't argue. It's different for everyone, isn't it? Love, magic, and how we see and deal, and in each the choices we make. I'll only say you've had but a short time here and with him to think of love and the choices that go with it. I knew the minute I saw him. Maybe that was a kind of vision, I don't know. But I felt this flutter. She pressed a hand to her belly, and this rising slid her hand to her heart. Attraction, I told myself, because he looked so amazing riding in on Alistair, but it was more. I told myself I couldn't go there because, well, at first I thought he was with Mara. She lifted her eyebrows when Connor let out a laughing snort. I don't know why that's so funny. They're gorgeous together, tall and fit and stunning, and they have this connection. It was clear from the start. Sure, like Branna and me, for they're as close as brother and sister and never been otherwise. But you thought they were more, so you pushed aside what you felt, or might have felt. That's to your credit. Not all would do the same. I'm wondering if I would myself. Love at first sight's a fairy tale, Branna said firmly. I love fairy tales. With a laugh, Iona propped her elbows on the table, her face on her fists. I decided it was just attraction, and okay, once Mara set me straight. I decided I just wanted to sleep with him, but I've never felt what I feel for him. And I know what it is, and I know it started when I saw him riding up on Alistair, both of them so fierce and furious. I fell for both of them right then and there. I'm trying to be patient, which isn't my nature at all. Alistair figured out he loved me. Now I just have to wait for Boyle to figure it out. You're confident he will? Branna asked her. You can't just hope for happy endings. You have to believe in them. Then do the work, take the risks, slay the dragon, though I really think dragons get a bad rap, kiss the princess or the frog, defeat the bad witch. Well, defeating the bad witch is happy ending enough for me. It shouldn't be, Iona thought, but Connor gave her hand a little squeeze before she said it. I've things to see to, but later on, after dinner, Branna continued, we'll practice again. Connor can help you with the visions, the healing. The solstice comes closer every day, and there's still work to be done. You have an idea what to do? You said Boyle hurt him in a dream, and with only a fist. We can do better than a fist. I've got to go back to the school, check on some hatchlings, but I'll be home within the hour. I'll walk with you, Iona told Connor. I'd like to give Alistair some exercise, even if it's just around the jumps course. Then I'll come back by, walk home with you. I can probably get a ride, but if not, I'll text you. Fine then, go off with both of you. Give me some thinking time. Branna pushed back from the table. You said Finn was to do a protection charm for Boyle's bed. Make sure he has before the two of you make use of it again. Okay. The next time you or any of us go into a dream, I want it to be a choice, and us doing the pulling in. 16. Iona changed into riding boots and took 10 seconds to put on some lip gloss in case she ran into Boyle. They both had obligations that evening, his paperwork, her spell casting, but she hoped to talk him into a ride after work the next day, maybe a casual dinner out, then a cozy night in at his place. Outside, she hooked her arm through Connor's. The air might have blown cool and damp, but spring rode with it and nudged the blackthorn into bloom. "Have you ever been in love?" she asked him. "Sure, countless times, and never the way you mean. Though my heart's been bruised and bumped, never has it been broken." I had the bumps too, and some bruises. When I was in high school, I actively wished for actual heartache, just to know what it felt like. I always wanted those big feelings, you know, the rush and the fall. What I got was mostly even ground, settling for someone I knew was settling for me. It makes you feel forever mediocre. And no? Now I feel powerful, purposeful. She circled her fingers, made tiny lights dance. Joyful. And I'll look good on you. Do you want to? Fall in love? Sure, one day. She'll walk into the room, beautiful and brilliant, a sexual goddess with the mind of a scholar and an angel's temperament. She'll cook like my Aunt Fiona, who can't be equalled in the kitchen, match me pint for pint at the pub, and like little better than to go hawking with me. You don't ask much. His eyes, green as the moss, twinkled at her. Why not ask for all, as you never know what life's going to hand you? Good point, she said, and made another dance of lights. In the stables, Boyle brushed Darling as much to soothe himself as to groom her. He'd sent his stable hands home a bit early, as he'd coveted a little time alone. Now, with the sweet mare for company and the quiet stables, he could roll through all the things crowding his mind. There were bills to pay and orders to make, and he'd get to all that, wouldn't he? He had all evening for that, as he wanted, he corrected. A man needed time and space of his own without a woman expecting his attention, so he shouldn't be thinking about going by and scooping her up so she'd be in his time and space. If anything, once the paperwork was seen to, he should take some of that time to think about all that had happened that day. He'd have to tell Finn the whole of it, of course, and would whenever Finn got back. They'd talk about it over a pint, so there was no room for Iona, even if he was inclined for her, which he was, all the damn time. What the hell did it mean when a man couldn't keep a woman out of his space, much less his mind? Bewitched is what he was, by blue eyes and an easy laugh and a pretty body he couldn't keep his bloody hands off of, and that utter faith in the good and the happy that lived inside her, though he understood more and more how little of either she'd had. Finding himself wanting to give her the good and the happy troubled him more than a little. Hadn't he planned out the entire day with the goal of giving her just that? Not that it had worked out in all cases, considering dark visions and a scare that had near stopped his heart, but he'd planned it all with her in mind. Always in his mind she was. It was time to remind himself that what a man needed when it came down to it was room, work, a good horse, and a pint at the end of a hard day. That's it, isn't it, darling? We've got what counts right here. In the next stall, Alistair snorted and blew. I'm not after talking to you, am I, bad-tempered beast? And you'd know about that, Finn said from behind him. What are you brooding about, brother? The man could sneak up on a body, Boyle thought, like smoke from a flue. Who says I'm brooding? I do. Finn reached out, stroked Darling's neck. Sent the men off early, did you? A bit. Everything's done needs doing today. I thought you'd be out rambling still with Iona. We did enough, maybe more than. Trouble, then? Of a personal sort or a magical sort? Both, I'm thinking. It started early this morning, as you know, when I shared a dream with her and came to blows with that cursed bastard. You had more trouble from that. When Finn gripped his shoulder, Boyle just kept brushing the horse. Nothing serious or lasting, so I'll tell you the rest. And he did from the beginning, right on through to when he carried Iona out of the friary, only grunted when Finn grabbed his hand. I told you she fixed it, and Connor had a look as well. I'll look for myself now. Once he did, Finn nodded, let Boyle's hand go. You said you hurt him. You sure of it now that some time's passed and you've thought it through? Boyle curled his hand into a fist. I know when I land a blow, mate. Aye, you would. Finn paced away and back again. I've given it some thought, and we'll use that. I'll think on it more, but use it we will. And I've a protection charm for you before you turn in for the night. Is she coming by? She's not, no. I need a night to myself, don't I? I've work and I've thinking of my own to do without being crowded. Finn lifted an eyebrow at the tone. Had a row? We did not. After I carted her out of the cursed friary, she packed away fish and chips like a starving woman. I took her around to Clew Bay, as she wanted to see the water. Then she spotted more ruins, another graveyard, so she wandered about. But there was nothing for her there like the other places, and that was a relief. She handles it well for someone coming into it later than most. I suppose she does, and it's a lot on her plate for all her appetite. And it makes me wonder. Finn gestured an opening. Wonder away. I want her here, even when I don't. Or I think I don't, then I do. The words sounded mad to his own ears, but he couldn't stop them now that he'd started. And I never have much liked women in my place, as they tend to fuss or leave things behind or bring little bits over, look to change the order of things. And does she? She doesn't, and that's suspect, isn't it? Boyle jabbed a finger in the air as if his point had been made. So, if she does those things, she's encroaching. If she doesn't, she's suspect. Mudder har, you're acting the gum. I'm not. Insulted, Boyle rounded on Finn. It's not being a fool to wonder if she's got some plan under there. She talked of weddings, mind you, of a wedding at Ballintubber Abbey, which it's famed for. Did she propose to you then, along the stations? I'm seeing no ring on your finger or through your nose. Smirk if you must, but I'm wondering. I think about her too much. 'Tisn't comfortable. When I have her in bed, it's like nothing else ever was. No one else. So I end up staying or having her stay, and then there's breakfast and on to work. I have to work, don't I? And she's pushed into my mind even then. It's fucking annoying now that I say it out loud. I can see that. It has to be a trial to you, having a woman as pretty as a spring morning and as fresh and sweet taking up your time and attention. I've a life to live, don't I? Boyle snapped back, as every word Finn spoke made him, well, feel as if he acted the gom. And a right to like that life, just as it was, before. Sure as I'm standing here, I'd trade places with you if I could, to have a woman in my mind and heart who was pleased and willing to have me in hers. But you have, of course, every right to live your life without a sweet and fresh and pretty woman in it. She's more than that, as well you know. I've never seen the like of her, and I've seen you, Branagh, Connor, but when it's on her, I've never seen the like. It takes my breath. I don't know what it is. I've a speculation on it. Boyle mimicked Finn's gesture. Speculate away. You sound like a man in love to me. Oh, sure, and that's helpful. Boyle resisted throwing the brush only because it would startle Darling. I'm telling you, she's pushed herself into my mind, my life, my bed, so I've barely a minute to myself. I took a day off work, which I don't do, as you know, to drive her all around Mayo and Galway. I can't get away from her even when I'm sleeping. I think she's bewitched me. Oh, Christ Jesus, Boyle. But Boyle had the bit between his teeth now. She's come into it late, as you said, and she's full of the power of it, so she's done a love spell to wrap me up this way. Bollocks! Even if she were inclined, and I don't see it, Branagh would never allow it. Branagh doesn't know everything, Boyle muttered, and glanced over darkly as Alistair kicked the wall of the stall. She's new to it, Iona is, testing her footing, so to speak. She's testing it on me, so I'm tangled up taking walks and rides and drives and fixing her breakfast after a night of her sleeping wrapped around me like a vine. So if she's put a love spell on me, you need to break it. Is that what you think? Very quietly, Iona stepped up to the stall. I'm sorry, but you were too busy shouting to hear me come in. What a lot you think of yourself, Boyle, and how little you think of me. Iona, she stepped back, chin jerking up. Do you really think I'm so weak, so sad, so pitiful that I'd want someone who didn't want me of their own free will? That I'd use magic to enchant you into spending time with me, having feelings for me? No, I'm only trying to work it out. Work. Her eyes filled, killing him, but the tears didn't come. Yeah, I know it's so much work to care about me, so I'll make it easy for you. There's no need, and there's no spell. I have too much respect for what I am to use it in such a small, selfish way. And I love you too much to ever use you at all. Every word came as a jab to his heart. Come upstairs now, we'll talk this through. There's nothing else for me to say, and I really don't want to talk to you now. Deliberately, she turned away from him. Finn, could you give me a ride home? I'll take you myself, Boyle began. You won't. No, you won't. I don't want to be with you. I can call Connor if you can't take me, Finn. Of course I can. You're not just walking away after watch me. She shot him a look so full of both devastation and fury he said nothing more when she turned and walked away. Let it be for now, Finn said quietly, and use some of this famous time and space to learn how to do a proper grovel. Ah, fuck me, and so you have. He hurried out after Iona, reached down to open the car door for her. He's never felt like this for anyone, he began. Don't try to smooth it over, please. If you could do me one favor, just don't say anything at all. I just want to go home. He did exactly as she asked, kept his silence on the short drive. He could feel her pain. It seemed to pulse from her, sharpen the air in the car so keenly he thought it a wonder it didn't draw blood. Love, as he knew too well, could slice you to pieces and leave no visible scar. He pulled up at the cottage, smoke curling from the chimney, an amazing array of colourful flowers twinkling in the evening gloom, and somewhere inside, Branna, as distant as the moon. Should I come in with you? No. Thanks for bringing me home. When she started to get out, he simply touched her hand. You're not hard to love, Drifjordbiag, but for some, loving is strange and boggy ground. He can be careful where he steps. Though her lips quivered, she managed an even tone. But he can't blame someone else for where he ends up. You'd be right. I'm sorry you heard what was— Don't apologize. It's better to see and know you're a fool than to keep your eyes shut and keep acting like one. She got out quickly. He waited until she'd gone in the house before driving away. He half wished he was in love with her himself and could show her what it was to be cherished. But as that wasn't an option, and it likely wasn't wise to go home and pound on Boyle's rock-hard head with a hammer, he'd go by and fetch Connor. They'd sit down with a bottle of whiskey, the three of them, and as good mates would, get Boyle drunk instead. Iona went straight in. She had no intention of crying on Branna's or anyone else's shoulder. She had no intention of crying at all. What she intended to do was hang on to the anger, and that would see her through the worst of it. So she went straight in and straight back to the kitchen where Branna sat at the table with her enormous spell book with its carved and well-tended brown leather binding, an iPad, a notebook, and several keenly sharpened pencils. Branna glanced up, cocked her head in question. What? Did you just go, turn around and come back? Yep, I'm having a really big glass of wine, she said as she walked to the cabinet. Do you want one? Now Branna's eyebrows drew together. I wouldn't say no. What happened? Did you have another encounter with Kavan? Not everything is about Kavan and ancient fricking evil. True to her word, she poured an enormous glass of wine, then a more sedate one for her cousin. Well now, here's a mood that's come on in under 20 minutes. Wasn't your horse happy to see you then? I never got to Alistair, which is just one more thing I can be pissed about. I never saw my horse, never got my ride. She handed Branna the glass, tapped her own to it. Bloody slancha! When Iona flopped down at the table, Branna took a sip of wine, studied her cousin over the rim. Anger, yes, but hurt besides. Deliberately, she kept her voice breezy. Not Cavan or the horse. So what does that leave? Let me see. Could it be Boyle? Could be, and is. I walked into the stables when he was ranting to Finn about how inconvenient it is for him to have me around all the time, in his space, in his way, in his bed, wrapped around him like a vine, in his words. He's an idiot, and I hope you gave him a solid boot for it. Men can be loathsome creatures, especially when they put their heads together. Oh, there's more, as if that wasn't bad enough. He's decided, since I've managed to push my way into his life, his head, his bed, I've put a love spell on him. Bollocks to that! The sympathy Branna tried to keep mild erupted into stunned insult. He must have been joking, just having it on with Finn, who likely teased him a bit. He wasn't joking, Branna. He was furious, shouting. He didn't even hear me come in. When I did, he was saying loudly that he barely has any time to himself the way I've pushed myself on him, and I'd put a love spell on him. I'm new at all this and testing the waters, and decided to test them on him with a love spell. He told Finn to break it. What a pair of right gobdaws. I don't know what that means, but it sounds insulting, so good. Except not Finn. He said bollocks to that too. I'm pleased to hear that, at least. Now we won't be turning him into a slug and drowning him in beer. Iona tried to laugh, but it kept catching. It's a good word, bollocks. I'm going to start using it a lot. Bollocks! 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 Her eyes filled, her throat burned, so she shook her head, gulped wine. No, no, no. I am not going to cry. I have to stay mad so I won't. Did you speak to Boyle, or just turn his penis into a warty little stub? I spoke with him. Iona swiped at the single tear that got through. I let him know I had too much respect for myself to use magic to get someone to want me, to love me. He tried to make excuses, but bollocks to that, right? I asked Finn to bring me back, and he did. He was kind. He could be, Branna thought, enormously kind, to some. Then I'm glad he was there. I won't make excuses for Boyle. What he said was a harsh and unwarranted insult to those like you and me. And more, it's hurtful because you have such strong feelings for him. I'll only say that while he's got a black temper at times, and is in the way of being, well, gruff's a simple word for it, at other times, I've never known him to hurt anyone like this. It's my thinking he's taken considerably aback by his feelings for you. He doesn't want them. I'm not going to cry over someone who doesn't want feelings for me. I may get a little drunk, but I'm not going to cry about it. A sensible attitude. Branna's phone jingled. It's Connor. Give me a moment. And where are you? She said into the phone by way of greeting. Right here, yes. No, we could do without you, you being a man for all that. That's best. That's fine. And when I want your fine advice, I'll be asking for it. Go on, be jackasses together, and you can tell Boyle he can count his luck I don't make that literal. She clicked off. Finn went by the school for Connor. I've told him, as you gathered, to go on, as men can just jam things up. I've a mind to ring up Mara, unless you'd rather I didn't. We can sit around, drink more wine, and say all the rude and truthful things about men without any of them around. That'd be great, really. But you're working. I'll get back to it. You feel sorry for me. A poor sort I'd be if I didn't. But I'm pissed right along with you, for you, myself, and every other self-respecting witch and every self-respecting woman. Love spell my arse! When Connor and Finn walked into Finn's house, Boyle paced the living room. What took you so bloody long? He began, then spotted Connor. Ah, well, before you jump up my arse, I never knew she was there and was just having a bit of a rant. I'm entitled to have a bit of a rant in my own stables. One question before we go any further on the matter. Connor held up a single finger. Are you saying Iona used magic to trap you? A love spell? I said it, as you bloody well know, but I'm not saying it. I was blowing off is all, or mostly all. Do you think she used magic on you? No, not when I knows enough for now, Connor told him. No means I'm not obliged to plant my fist in your face, the result of which would be you kicking the living shit out of me, and I'd rather have a beer. Bugger it, Boyle, you know what you're about and what's over the line for us. You should know the same of Iona. I do, but it's... Well, fuck it, have a swing. I won't hit back as I earned it. There's no satisfaction in punching under those conditions. I'll do it, Finn volunteered. You're not her cousin, Boyle shot back, then threw up his hands, jutted out his chin. Go on then, have a go. Finn only smiled. I'll save that offer and have that go when you least expect it. Why didn't I think of that? Connor shrugged out of his jacket. I want the beer, then you can tell me how you plan to fix this up with Iona. If she'd just be reasonable. That's not the way, mate. Connor dropped down on the big leather couch. Any crisps to go with the beer? I'll take care of it. There's steaks, and Boyle can do the cooking in a bit, Finn decided, to practice being humble and apologetic. Look here. Boyle sat down, leaned forward. You asked if I meant it, right? I said I didn't, and that's that. Reasonable. And you expect her to be the same. I was blowing off, Boyle insisted. When she's calmed herself, I'll tell her I was just, venting and didn't mean anything by it. That's all. Connor said nothing for a moment, then glanced over as Finn came back with bottles of Smithwick's and a bag of potato chips. I know he's been around and with women before, Connor said conversationally. I've seen that for myself, and met some of them as well. But if I didn't know better, I'd swear an oath the man has just crawled out of a cave, full grown, without having any female contact whatsoever. Ah, feck off. Grovelling. Finn tossed the beers, one to Connor, one to Boyle, dropped down on the sofa, propped his feet on the oversized coffee table he'd found on his travels. I'm not doing that. Madrahar, I wager you will before it's done. I've 100 I'll put on it. He's mad for her, he said to Connor. Sure, that's one more reason he'll make a complete bags of it. I should go talk to her now, get it done and finished. I wouldn't advise it. Connor grabbed a handful of chips. She's with Branna, and my sister isn't too pleased with you at the moment. I reckon she'll pull Mara in, so that'll be all the three of them sending hard thoughts, at the least of it, your way. Well, Jesus, I can't go about fixing anything if she won't talk to me and she's being guarded by a witch and a woman with a tongue as sharp as a razor. Resign yourself to stewing in it tonight, and maybe a day or two more, Finn advised. After that, I'm thinking flowers won't do the trick here. Connor washed down the chips with beer. She's a romantic soul, our Iona, but flowers are paltry, considering the insult. I didn't insult her, Boyle began, then swore bitterly before gulping down beer. All right, then, I did. I admit it. Admitting a wrong and apologising ought to be enough. Finn slid down to his slouch. I'm forced to agree with you, Connor, though it pains me about the cave. She's not a man, brother, and you don't handle her as one with a sorry, mate, I'll stand you around. Flowers, as she's romantic, and something with some shine to it to show you understand the depth of your mistake. Astonished, Boyle shot straight up in his chair. Now I'm buying her jewellery just for blowing off when she wasn't even meant to be there. I'll not do it. A man had his pride and his spine, didn't he? It's nothing but a bribe. Think of it more as an investment, Finn suggested. Christ Jesus, man, have you never put your foot in it with a woman and had to find the way to pull it out again? Boyle set his jaw. If I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. If that's not enough, well, that's that. I've never gone around with a woman who matters, so, and she does matter, Connor finished. It should be apparent enough. He brewed it into his beer. I'm not going around buying flowers and baubles to put a patch on it. I'll apologise, for I couldn't be sorrier to have put that look on her face. Mad, that's fine. You shout it out and it's finished. But I hurt her, and I'm sorry for it. He pushed up. I'll see about the steaks. Mad for her, Finn said when Boyle left the room. And panicked with it, which would be good fun if this hadn't happened. She'll forgive him, for she's tender-hearted and just as mad for him. But she won't shine again until he gives her back what she's so willing to give him. What would that be? Love, given freely and without conditions. The flowers, the bauble will make her smile when she's ready. But he'll have to give over himself before she shines again. It's what makes us all shine, Finn observed. In the living room of the cottage, with the fire simmering and candles lit, Iona snuggled into the corner of the couch. Mara had not only come, but with provisions of pizza and ice cream. Pizza, cookie dough ice cream, wine, and girls. Iona lifted her glass in toast. The best there is. I keep the pizza and ice cream in the freezer for just such emergencies. It's perfect. We should all be lesbians. You'll have to speak for yourself there. Amused, Mara took a second slice. I think the Amazons were probably lesbians, or some of them anyway. That's what I thought of you when I first saw you. Choking on her bite of pizza, Mara downed some wine. You took a look at me and thought, why, there's a lesbian. Amazon. I hadn't thought about your sexual orientation. Then I saw you and Boyle together and figured you were together, but that was wrong. Amazon, Iona repeated, tall and gorgeous and built. I'm a little bit drunk. She smiled at Branna. Thanks. Oh, any time at all. We can all be Amazons. You're a bit short for it, Mara pointed out. There had to be some runts in the litter. Word is she's small but mighty, Branna added. Damn right. See what I can do? She popped a jittery ball of flame into her hand. Best not to play with fire or magic when you're a little bit drunk, Branna advised. Right. She winked it out. But I can do it, that's the point. I can take care of myself. I'm going to buy a car, then when I want to drive around, I'll drive my own damn self. I've got power and purpose. I don't need a man. If we're to be Amazons, we'll just use them for sex or whatever else comes to mind, then cast them out or kill them. Iona nodded at Mara. Let's do that. Not the killing, it's a little extreme, but the sex and whatever. I really like sex. Here's to it. Mara lifted her glass, drank, then glanced at Branna. Aren't you drinking to sex? I'll drink to it, as that's the closest I've come to it in some time. Iona sighed a little bit drunkenly. You could have sex with anybody. You're so gorgeous. Thanks very much, but anybody doesn't appeal to me at this time. She's particular about the matter, Mara added. Me too, or I have been. I think I'll stop doing that. Sex with Boyle was spectacular. Do tell, Mara commented. And I mean, do. I've all the time in the world. With a laugh, Iona sipped more wine. Hot and wild and sweaty, like the world was going to end any minute and you had to have each other first. Ah, well, I haven't come close to that particular brand in some time myself. Done now. Iona swiped a hand through the air. It's time for a good dose of cynicism because love sucks. Who needs it when you've got pizza and ice cream and girls and lots of wine? I've always figured it was the frosting. Now Iona stabbed a finger toward Mara. Frosting's fattening and gives you cavities. There's the risk of that, to be sure, but, well, you've got to bake the cake, don't you? Bake it well, so it satisfies yourself. And maybe you decide to add frosting, maybe you don't. Love is a choice? No, Iona thought, no. Love just picked you up and tossed you in. But how do you choose? You've baked your cake, and there it is, and you're thinking, that's a pretty good cake, that's good enough for me. Then you blink, and all this wonderful frosting just plops down on it out of nowhere. Mara shrugged. You could scrape it off. You can, Branna agreed, but it takes some of the cake with it, and you never get all the frosting gone. That's sad. It sounds true, Iona murmured, and sad. We can't be sad. I refuse it. We need music, she decided. Would you play, Branna? I love to hear you play. Why not? Branna stood. I'm in the mood to play. I'll get my fiddle, and Mara, you tune up your pipes. Iona got up to stir the fire when Branna went out. I know Branna's answer because I've seen her and Finn and heard the story. But have you ever been in love? Well, sticking with the theme, I've dipped my finger in the bowl of frosting and had a small sample or two, but nothing more. From her own corner of the couch, Mara shifted. I want to say, Boyle can be an idiot. Branna called him a gobdaw, and that as well, as can most men. And I'm sorry to say our side as well has moments of grand stupidity. I want to say as well, I've known him a good long time, and I've never seen him look at another woman the way he looks at you. She believed that, she'd felt that, but I wish it could be enough. My problem is, I always want more. Why is that a problem? It's a problem when you don't get it. She plopped down again as Branna came back with her violin case. He's out there, Branna said. Boyle? And damn it, Iona felt her heart jump. No, Cavan. This time her nerves jumped even as she and Mara pushed off the couch. There's fog all around the house, pressed right up to the windows like a peeping Tom. What should we do? Iona saw it now, the grey curtain of it, as she stepped to the glass with her friends. We should do something. We will. We'll have music. He can't go past my shield on this place, Branna said as she calmly took out the fiddle, the bow. So we'll have more wine, and we'll have music, and we'll shove the sound of it right up his arse. Something lively, then. Mara shot her middle finger at the window before she turned. Something for dancing. I'll see if I can teach Iona a few steps. I'm a fast learner, she said, as much to what lurked outside as to Mara. 17. The hangover woke her, the steady throb, throb, throb in her temples that picked up the beat from the bang, bang, bang in the center of her skull. She'd had worse, Iona thought, but not by much. She considered pulling the covers over her head and trying to sleep it off, but she wouldn't miss work. Cautiously, she opened her eyes, then squinted at the living room window. Not in bed, she realized, but on the couch, with a pretty throw in melting shades of purple tucked around her. She remembered now. She'd stretched out on the couch after dancing herself breathless and after joining her friends in a song or two. She didn't have their quality of voice, but she knew the words thanks to Nan and could pull off some decent harmony. Plus, it was fun, she thought, and defiant, making song as the fog curled outside. She'd drunk, eaten, talked, laughed, then sung and danced her way through that first awful punch of pain. And now she had a hangover to distract her, and that was all to the good. She hadn't cried, or not enough to count, and that was even better. She'd down a gallon of water, a bottle or two of aspirin, make herself eat something, then shower for a few days. All better. And she'd work through the rest. Sometime between the first glass of wine and the last, she determined she'd go to the stables as usual. She wouldn't crawl off and quit a job she loved because her boss, her lover, had broken her all-too-fragile heart. If he wanted her gone, he'd have to fire her. She got up, shuffled her way to the kitchen. She'd gulped down water, some aspirin, and was contemplating trying some dry toast when Mara walked in, looking annoyingly bright-eyed and rosy. Got a bit of a head this morning, do you? Iona gave Mara as close to the stink-eye as she could manage. Why don't you? Oh, I've a head like a rock and a stomach like iron. She spoke cheerfully as she put on coffee. Can't remember ever being the worse for wear after a drinking night. I hate you. And who's to blame you? We left you where you dropped last night, as it seemed best. Since I'd brought a change with me in case we made a night of it, I slept in your room. You'll want the coffee and some food in your system. Oatmeal, I'm thinking. Iona winced. Really? Good and healthy. I'll make it up, as Brana won't be stirring as yet. Does she have a head like a rock and a stomach like iron, too? I'd say she does, yes, but then she's careful how much she drinks. She's one to keep her wits about her always. Here now. Mara poured the coffee. When she's up, ask her to fix you a potion for the head. She has one that's renowned. Good to know. I'd like a clear head when I get to work. So you're sticking with it, then? Mara gave her a light shoulder punch of approval. Good for you. I'm not going to deprive myself of work I love or mope in a corner. I need the job, so we'll figure out how to work together, unless he fires me. He never would. He's not so hard, Iona. No, he's not. Besides, the sun may be out now, but there's always a chance of fog. With that to deal with, we have to put the rest aside. No chinks in the circle, right? You've got spine. This time Mara gave her a quick rub on the shoulder. If you're really making oatmeal, I'll go up, soak some of this hangover away in the shower, and get dressed for work. She hesitated, then wrapped her arms around Mara in a hug. You and Brana got me through a tough night. Ah, well now, what else are friends for if not that? By the time she got out of the shower, the throbbing and banging had clicked down a couple levels, but a sober study of her face in the mirror told her more help was needed. Instead of her usual workday slap and dash on makeup, she took some time, some care. She didn't want Boyle to think the pale cheeks and smudged eyes were due to him, though indirectly they were, since she'd overindulged to buffer the hurt. Satisfied she'd done the best with what she had to work with, she dressed and went back down to face oatmeal. She found Brana, sleepy-eyed in her pajamas, drinking coffee as Mara hummed a tune while she slapped butter on toasted bread. And there's herself now, and looking only half dragged out. That bad? Not bad at all, Mara said staunchly, and dished out oatmeal. Sure we can do better. Brana crooked a finger. Lean down here, since you won't do it for yourself. She glided her hands gently over Iona's face. Just a touch, as we don't want him to think you fussed for him, either. That brought on a smile. You read my mind. It's sensible, so a little glamour adds just the right touch. We women and witches stick together. Mara says you've a bit of a head. It's better. Drink that. She tapped her finger on a glass filled with pale green liquid. What is it? Good for what ails you. Herbs and such, and a touch of more. No point going in as you are, feeling less than well or looking it. You're showing backbone by dealing with what is, so you'll have a reward. And oatmeal. Mara set 3 bowls on the table, went back for the toast, then sat. Here goes. Considering it medicine, Iona drank the potion, but found it had a cool, fresh flavour with a faint hint of mint. It's nice. Good for what ails you, doesn't have to be unpleasant. Eat as well, it adds to it. You're both taking care of me. I want to say, if either of you get the crap kicked out of you by love, I'll be there for you. That's reassuring. Mara dug into the oatmeal. The hangover slid away like raindrops sliding down a window pane, a kind of slow, soft, liquid fading that left Iona feeling refreshed and rested. You could make a fortune off that single potion, she told Brana as she pulled on her jacket. It's a miracle. Not quite that, and making fortunes isn't all it's thought to be. We work tonight, cousin, and twice as hard for the night off. I'll be ready. I know you're not much for hugs, she added as she gave Brana a squeeze, but I am. She stepped outside with Mara. I don't think Cavan liked the music. I hope it rings in his ears still. I'll speak with you later, Mara said to Brana, and strode to her truck. I hate I'm saying this, she continued when Iona sat beside her, but don't be too awful hard on him. Oh, he deserves it, with no doubt, the donkey's arse, but men can be such fumblers. I don't want to be hard on him, I just want to get through. Then you will. He didn't expect her to come to work, and it chafed at him that he couldn't blame her. Before the mucking and feeding, watering, and daily morning medications began, he huddled down with the weekly schedule. In a relatively short time, he realized, he'd assigned Iona to so many tasks, students, duties, he'd need to do a bit of scrambling to fill in her spots. Pain in the arse, and really, when you thought about it all in a rational way, there was no reason she'd get herself in such a state so she'd toss the work in the trash bin along with the rest. And if he could just have a rational word or two with her, he'd surely climb out of the bin himself. If women were more like men, life would run along smoother without a doubt. He stewed and finagled the schedule, brooded and shifted hours and students. As he pushed away to pull out his mobile and begin to make the necessary calls, he heard Mara's truck drive up. Hers ran with a cougar's purr rather than mix aging lion with bronchitis. He strolled out, determined to pass the calls to her, and to very casual-like pump her for information on Iona, as word was she'd stayed over at Branna's. So it threw him off stride when Iona stepped out of the passenger's door, dressed for the workday. "Morning, then," Mara said with a kind of fierce cheer, and walked right by him into the stables. He led with, "I'm here to work." In a clipped voice he'd never heard her use, Iona stopped a foot away to speak to him, "And that's all. I need the work, I like the work, I'm good at the work. If you intend to fire me—" "Fire you?" Shocked and once again off stride, he gaped at her. "Of course I'm not after firing you. Why, good, then that's that." "Well, no, wait a minute there. We need to talk about—" "We don't," she cut him off in that same tone, cool and dismissive. "I know what you feel and think, and on some level, I understand it. You're entitled to feel what you feel, and I'm responsible for my own feelings. So it's just work, Boyle, and you have to respect that." She turned her back on him, walked to the stables. He could stop her, just pluck her up and haul her off somewhere private where she'd have to talk it out and over. He thought of doing just that for a moment, then let her go. He stuffed his hands in his pockets, stood in the cool morning air, and wished he'd gotten the damn flowers. He tried it her way. As he was the one who'd fucked up, he was obliged to give her the room she asked for. She went about her work, but not all brisk business as he'd expected. Oh no, she had plenty to say to Mara, to Mick and the others, a laugh to share, a question to ask, but not a bloody word did she speak to him unless given no choice. She managed to be cordial and distant at once. It pissed him off. Then, when the mad faded, the guilt piled in. "You're driving him mad." Mara watched Iona saddle Spud for a guided ride. "I'm just doing my job and leaving the personal out of it." Exactly what's driving him mad. He'd say, being male, and being especially Boyle, the logical thing to do in such situations is separate the business from the personal, but you doing just that's squeezing his balls. He doesn't know whether to yelp or drop. "I'm getting through." After tightening the cinch, Iona put on her riding helmet. "That's what counts. But I can't say I'm sorry it's giving his balls a good squeeze." She led the group out, a couple and 2 teenage girls from America taking advantage of spring break, letting them chatter among themselves. But she did glance back once, and couldn't deny a quick twist of satisfaction at catching Boyle watching her ride away. As they turned into the woods, she brushed her fingers over the amulet she wore, then tapped them to her pocket where she'd put a protection charm that morning. She wouldn't fear the woods, she told herself. She wouldn't fear what came, and she wouldn't fear living her life alone, if that's what destiny handed her. Putting her guide's smile on, she shifted in the saddle, glanced back at the family. "So, how are you enjoying your visit so far?" A busy day moved quickly, and for that she was grateful. Knowing she did just exactly what she needed to do didn't make it any easier to do it. She wanted to smile at Boyle and see him flash her a grin in return. Wanted to feel entitled to touch him, just a hand to his, a hand on his arm, and have him feel entitled to do the same. She wanted to be easy with him again. Even if they couldn't be lovers, even if she had to find a way to snuff out the light of the love she felt for him, she wanted him in her life. Needed him, she corrected as she cleaned up at the big stables after her lesson with Sarah. Until Cavan was defeated, until what Sorka had begun so long ago was finished, they all needed one another. What they faced was so much bigger than a bruised heart and some scarred pride. They'd find a way. If Branna and Finn could work together, she could certainly work with Boyle. It might take some time to find the right way, to smooth out the bumps, and they'd have to talk it out, she admitted. But not yet. Too tender yet. She hugged Alistair's neck, pleased when he nuzzled her. "I've got you, don't I? My guide, my friend, my partner. I've got family who cares about me and understands me, and I've got a home, a place I belong. It's more than I ever had before." She drew back, kissed his nose. "So no complaints, no pity parties. I'll see you tomorrow." She walked out, noted she timed it well when she spotted Connor strolling toward the stables, his whistled tune leading the way. The perfect Irish picture, she thought. A good-looking man, all lanky limbs and wicked angel face, hands in the pockets of his rough work pants, and the brown path and green, green woods behind him. "All done for the day, then," he called out. "Just now. You? Ready to walk my pretty cousin home and see if our Branna baked any fresh biscuits today. I've a yen for some, and since, according to our Branna, we're working tonight, I deserve them as well." "I'm ready for magic," she wiggled her fingers, "and to learn something new." "New, is it?" "Astral projection. I'm doing it in dreams, either on my own or manipulated by Cavan. I don't know for sure, but I don't control it. I want to." "It's a good arrow for your quiver. And so, how did it all go with Boyle today?" "Maybe a little awkward and tense here and there, but we got through it. It should be easier going forward." "He's feeling a right shit about the whole business." She would not feel pleased, maybe just a little. She would not feel sorry, or she'd ignore the sorry. "He feels what he feels. That's why we're here. He's your friend." She gave Connor's arm a quick rub. "He feels bad he hurt me. You feel bad that he feels bad. We all just have to get past it and not lose sight of what we have to do." "And you can do that?" "I've had a disappointed heart before." She said it lightly, had to, as it went so deep. "I think some of us are just destined not to connect that way." "But you don't." He took her hand in his, gave it a bolstering squeeze. "You don't think that at all." "I think," she said more carefully, "there's something about me that makes it difficult for others to forge an intimate connection to." "Bollocks!" he began, but she shook her head. "My own parents couldn't. Is that them or is it me? Who knows? But if they can't, and there's been no one until Boyle I wanted deep down to make that connection to, I can't blame him. If it's me, I have to work on me. And I have been. I'm a classic work in progress." "You're wrong about the connection, or anything about it being you. You're as easy to love as a summer morning. If we weren't cousins, I'd marry you myself." She laughed at that, touched, then sent him a sultry sidelong stare. "We're distant cousins." "Cousins all the same." He slung an arm around her shoulders. "And it's too odd and tangled for that." "Too bad, because you're so pretty. I'll say the same right back to you." He opened the door to the workshop, gave his arm an exaggerated sweep to usher her in, then sniffed the air. Ginger biscuits, and what a fine welcome home. Have some, and your tea, as we've work to make up. At the counter, Branna poured white liquid wax into a clear jar already weighted with a long white wick. Iona wondered how Connor scented the ginger over the summer fragrance of hydrangea. "How did it all go, then?" Branna asked as she tipped up the pan, moved down to the next jar. "First day down, and not too bad. She thinks she's unlovable." Connor spoke over a mouthful of cookie. "Oh, bollocks!" "I didn't say that. Don't think that. I meant... Never mind." She grabbed a cookie for herself. "Do you need help with those?" "I'm about done, but you can help me with the labels and wick trimming later on. I've made dozens, as we're running low, and the tourists come thicker in spring than in winter. Have your tea. We'll work twice as much today for working not at all yesterday. I'm ready." "She's after astral projection," Connor put in. "Astral projection, is it?" Pursing her lips, Branna studied Iona. "It wasn't what I had in mind, but, well, why not? It's a fine skill to have." With the last jar filled, she left them cooling on the rack, pulled off the white bib apron she'd worn to protect her poppy-red sweater from drips and spills. "It's not the same as the active dreaming you've done, but not so very different. Have you been practicing your meditating?" Iona winced. "Probably not as much as I should. My mind always wants to go somewhere. Training your mind's part of it, training it, quietening it, and, as I've said, focusing it. Here, bring your tea to the fire. You should be relaxed in body and mind and spirit." Iona obeyed, and Cahill stirred from his nap to lay a paw on her foot in hello. "Just watch the fire, have your tea. You like the taste of it, and the biscuit. Quiet breathing. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. You can smell the peat fire and the candles just poured, the herbs hanging to dry. Rosemary especially. Sure, it's a favourite. You hear your breath go in and out, and Cahill's tail swishing against the floor, the crackle of the fire and the sound of my voice. It's soothing, all soothing. The touch of my hand and Cahill's paw, soothing all, so you can drift a bit, float a bit, quiet and peaceful. But trust me, I'll be with you this first time. Take you this first time. See where you want most to go. See it in the fire. See it in your mind." "Nan's kitchen," Iona realized all at once. "I miss her. She's never done anything but love me, believe in me. She's been the only one who has for so long. I'm what I am because of Nan." Branna glanced at Connor as he came over to sit on Iona's other side. "A long trip for a first," she murmured. "Her heart takes her there. And so will we. Do you see it? Nan's kitchen, in the fire, in your mind. It's like yours. I mean, feels like yours, not looks like. It's smaller, and there's no hearth. I see the walls. They're like a warm peach, and the cabinets are dark, dark brown. There's an old butcher block table. When I sat with her there, I could tell her anything. She told me what I am, told me about the first dark witch while we sat at that table having tea and cookies, biscuits, just like now. She keeps herbs on the windowsill, and the blue and green pottery bowl I gave her for her birthday years ago on the table. There were red apples in it the day she told me everything, not just pieces, but all. Shining red apples in the green and blue bowl. Her eyes are like mine, the same color, the same shape, and when they look at me, I believe. Focus on the bowl, the colors of that, the shape of that. Let yourself lift, let yourself go where you want to go. Quiet breaths, quiet mind, quiet purpose. Lift, float, fly. She lifted, floated as if weightless. The air, the light, all pulsed blue, quiet, soothing. And as she felt the first stirring of its power, of hers, she flew, fast, free, soaring over green hills misted by blue, over water, blue under blue. Branna's voice sounded in her mind, "Breathe, keep your focus,